Well, hello, everybody. This is Tim Green with the Rattle Magazine. Welcome to the Rattlecast. We're the biggest freewheeling live stream poetry podcast on the planet. We're so glad you could be here for episode 289. Today's guest is Susan Browne. She'll be here in a few minutes, but before we get in, I should say that Rattle is a publication of the Rattle Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit working to promote the practice of poetry. We've been in continuous publication since 1995 and are unaffiliated with any other organization. We just do all this because we love poetry. I know you do too, so please do click on the like button, share, make sure you're subscribed, ring the bell for notifications, tell all your friends, share it on social media. The more viewers we get, the more clicks we get, the more people get to enjoy the wonderful experience that enriching poetry is. And so make sure you do your part. That's all we ask. Click something. Now we're going to start out like we usually do with today's Poets Respond poet. And Scott Lowery is here from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Hey, Scott, how you doing?
Hi, Tim. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm really glad to have you on. Wonderful poem. There's so many political poems. It's one of those eras in Poets Respond where the politics takes the front stage. And this is a wonderful poem along those lines. What can you tell us about how this poem came to be?
Well, I was as I described in the little artist statement thing at the bottom of the poem when it's up. I was at a hands-off rally in Milwaukee, downtown Milwaukee, last weekend, and so one of the speakers was our congresswoman from Milwaukee, Gwen Moore, who's a 74-year-old black congresswoman, wonderful veteran of the civil rights era, and she just this one phrase that she said stuck in my mind, kind of pun intended, rattled around in my mind for a while. And, I just tried the trick with, I moved to write things about, that would be called political poetry, but I'm kind of resisting that as a label these days because it's like, what isn't political poetry in some ways? But the trick, of course, as you have said in many interviews with people, that to have it be a poem instead of a manifesto or an op-ed piece, and and that's really hard. So what happened with this one, I think, is that just following that phrase, listening to it in my head, and kind of figuring out, okay, where does this go and where does this take me? I think helped me make a poem out of it instead of an op-ed piece.
Yeah. And the impetus was this quote, democracy in America has always been aspirational, which is one of those things I've heard before, but I couldn't put my finger on where either. And and I looked around and couldn't find a source for the quote. So it's something that sort of occasionally people say, but it's a really interesting, Barack Obama has said that and a few other people for sure recently, but I couldn't really trace back the source of it. But it's a really interesting thing to riff on. Do you want to go ahead and read the poem?
Glad to. Political speech. Democracy in America, she said, has always been aspirational, the bronze bell of its summons rung by noble oligarchs with blood on their soft white hands, which is not to say that democracy in America isn't inspirational, isn't a flickering beacon above some battered shore awash in bodies. In fact, it's always both, the opened arms, the double-locked gate, which leaves us here together, always separate, never equal, mouthing the words for breakfast, spitting them out before lunch, all of us trying to love what never loved us back like it said it would. Those bell tower words shimmering, reverting to mere air from which they were made, proving again, democracy in America has always been, will always be, just this, respirational. Watch your breath, the yogi says. Feel it buzzing with multitudinous life. Each time you welcome it in and let it go.
Yeah, beautiful turn there to the respirational, and it's so true. I mean, it's one of those poems that captures just the complexity of the current age and everything that's going on, and that's what we were always trying to do with poetry. So thanks so much for doing that, Scott, and being here tonight, sharing that poem with us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So once again, that was Scott Lowery with his poem. Today's poem on Rattle.com, Political Speech. Of course, if you have any poems about current events, which often include the political but don't necessarily have to, we've had poems about, eels spilled on the highway and things like that too. Anything that's going on right now, we like to add poetry into the conversation. And all you have to do is go to Rattle.com, find that Poetry Spawn link up under content, and submit your poems by Friday night at midnight. We'll get them up on Sunday. The poem of the week there. Occasionally we have some room for extra in the middle of the week too, so send whatever you'd like whenever you would like. Now we're going to take a quick break and go to our main guest, Susan Browne, so sit tight and we'll be right back with a whole lot more poetry. And we're back. Thanks for your patience. Like I said, today's guest is Susan Browne. Susan first appeared on Rattlecast number 29. Her fourth collection, Monster Mash, was just released from Four Way Books. She's published 3 previous collections of poetry, Buddha's Dogs, which we talked about a lot last time, Zephyr, and Just Living. Awards include prizes from Four Way Books, the Los Angeles Poetry Festival, the River Styx International Poetry Contest, the Fischer Poetry Prize, and the James Dickey Poetry Prize. She received a fellowship from the Provincetown Fine Arts Works Center, too. She's also collaborated to create a word music CD. She lives in Northern California, and here she is, Susan Browne. Hey, Susan, how you doing?
Good, Tim. Nice to be on here.
Yeah, it's great to have you back. I especially love, the guest that came on. You were in episode 29, which was, we were talking about February 18th, I think you said, 2020, so right before the pandemic. And it's always really fun to have guests from that time when I didn't really know what I was doing, and we were kind of fumbling around with this show.
I think we were wearing big, headsets. And
it was before the technology really took off, I think. And, now everybody's on Zoom. We're all familiar with, doing it this way. But before, I used to have to tell people how to do it, and there were all these instructions. And then the sound quality was all mixed up. And it's so nice to have... I think you were right after I actually had a camera on myself for the guests. So for a while, I didn't even have that. But it's great to have you on, Susan, and congratulations on your new book.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Well, let's start out with
it was right before the pandemic. Yeah, February 18th.
Yeah, it definitely was. I think that was that might have been the day that we had the coronavirus in China poem too, which was the first one we published. The first of 100 or something in Poetry Spawn about it too.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So it's interesting to look back 5+ years. Let's go start out though with a poem from Monster Mash. Do you want to read the first poem in the book?
Yeah. The first. The book has 4 sections, and the first section has a lot of poems about climate crisis. Science matters. A quantum fluctuation can delete the universe in a matter of seconds. I read all about it and still don't understand. It has to do with the theory of vacuum decay. I could spend all day trying to figure that out, but I don't have time, because in approximately 4 billion years, our galaxy will collide with the Andromeda galaxy, and both will be destroyed, and in the process form another galaxy. My father once owned a Ford galaxy. My sister almost killed us in it, breaking just in time before we hurtled off a cliff, afraid to move or breathe, so close to the edge, We were as silent as space. I felt a weird calm, like knowing the universe could vanish in less than a sneeze. This colossal loss somehow ease smaller losses. But who's counting? Rivers, trees, starlings, choking on our exhaust. I loved that car. Yellow like sunlight on wheels. I got my driver's license and the next day crunched the galaxy with a telephone pole. I can't remember what kind of car came next. It was starting to move. I was starting to move into my own constellation. And my sister got married and had children who now have children. And my parents flew past Andromeda, one fluctuation after another. And what comes next is a subject for contemplation at 3 in the morning, lying in bed like something as cryptic as a quantum, carried by something magnificent we've colossally dented. No foot, no break. The cliff coming toward us.
Yeah, and that was the opening poem to Monster Mash. That was Science Matters from Susan Browne's new book. It's a beautiful book, it is, Susan. What can you tell us about how this book came to be in the form that it is? Why Monster Mash, the title, and how did the contents of the poems you were writing about turn into the book that you have here?
Oh, I knew you were going to ask me that question. So I have been, of course, I've been thinking about it. I've been thinking about it for a long time. For me, this is my fourth book, so my books just get built. They get built as they go along. And I wish I was someone who wrote more in, I have some direction. I know exactly where I'm going. But I don't. I don't write that way. And it's really a mystery of, what comes to me and what is important to me to write about. And some things have lasted, some things that I write about last, continuously throughout my writing life. I keep writing about that over and over and over again, coming at it at a different angle. But I've been writing poems since, probably since 2008, about the climate and about noticing the changes and living in California and the heat. And so that was the beginning of a lot of poems that started to be in this book. And then the pandemic. Then the pandemic happened. And so then there's poems in the book about that. The politics of what have been going on, that's just been so huge too. And then also, Tim, I got old. I just keep getting old, and luckily I get old. So that aging is in there, and then also elegies from my mother because it's one of the big subjects of my life, her death, and so Monster Mash. I had no idea what actually to title this book, and I think it had maybe 3 different titles, and one of them was Monster Mash. And different friends read the book and said, "Oh God, it's got to be Monster Mash." And I think it's mash. It's the mash, the mix of all that's been going on, and since I've been writing this book, which has been my last book came out in 2019. So this book has probably been, poems are in it from 2018, from 2017, from 2016. I don't know how long. Mm-hmm. So that's the, and then the monster. I have 2 poems in the book. I didn't think to read those. 2 poems titled Monster Mash, and one was earlier on, which is more of a lighthearted poem about Boris Karloff's Monster Mash. His song. It was a graveyard smash, and it was a big song when I was a child. And then I wrote Monster Mash, the second poem of Monster Mash. I wrote to the painting by Julie Heffernan, which I just love so much. And I thought, well, I got to write a poem. The title poem should be about this painting. And so, yeah, it just came to me, and that just kind of, I felt like I put the whole mash together.
Yeah, well, well, it's such a great title, given and it because it implies the second line, I think, which you quoted. Monster Mash. It was a graveyard smash, and that's so much of what goes on in the book. Is dealing with loss and grief and the inevitable end of things. Which whether talking about the fate of the planet, 4 billion years from now, like that first poem, or more personal things too. And yet we still have to find ways to rejoice, and so it still has to be a smash. And that dichotomy is what plays, throughout the book in so many different poems, and feels like it's a thread that connects it together. So I think it is a really great title. Let's read. It's a perfect poem for today because it's April 13th, and we went to this arts festival. It's always in the spring here because it's nice, cool weather for southern Texas, and it was like in the 90s and brutally hot. So why don't we read 106 Degrees in Springtime? It's a great poem for today.
Oh, thanks for saying that, though, about we have to do something. We have to celebrate in some way, also always, with all the things that go on throughout history and all the things that are happening. And yeah, that song was the first poem that I wrote about being a kid and doing the Monster Mash in front of the class, and doing this little dance and pantomime. It's just the lightheartedness also that the humor that I try to bring into the book as well. Well, this poem is not very lighthearted. No, 106 degrees in Springtime. After our fight, I go for a drive through the drought-stricken night, stricken with how far we've come to ruin our love, how we evolved from monkeys to become monkeys, biting each other's throats. I want to ask the moon for help, but its light is wilted from heat stroke. What makes us forget that we are each other's planet, on our only planet? I park by the creek that's only a trickle. What will we finally do with all the cars when the rivers are dark scars? What are we doing? I say when I get home. You standing at the door, your sad face looking into mine, the moon looking down on us, tearless.
Yeah, so that was 106 Degrees in Springtime, earlier poem in the book from Monster Mash by Susan Browne. And I do want to talk more about that, that celebrating, that the need that we have, because we definitely do. I think, I go through sort of these thoughts very frequently, is that when we think about, the at least the narratives of impending doom. That this, the kids, what they must be absorbing. I have kids that are in their teens, and they grow up in a world where a lot of people don't think the world will still be here when they're older, and how much of a difference that makes on how you live. But then I think back too about how, we had the threat of nuclear war that was so pervasive, and everybody was hiding under their desks before that. And, and then we had, beliefs of, revelation coming, or we had Mongols at the gates, and you heard that the horde was coming, 30 miles away, and they're going to be here to your town next. And so in a way, it's the human condition just to experience, to find joy and find a reason to keep pushing on despite the difficulty and despite the impending doom, which has always been there. And so, I don't know, it's just such a fascinating topic. And I worry about the kids these days, as it were, but then it's kind of like we always have lived like this. And I think we have to keep doing the struggle that is humanity. And I think, poetry is part of that too. So can you talk just a little bit more about that, about the need to celebrate in the face of impending calamity?
Well, yeah, I mean, my husband and I were just driving around town looking for a Mexican restaurant that we want to take our family to when they come here to visit next month. And so we were out sort of more in the outskirts of town. Then I said, let's go downtown. It was Saturday night. And so we went downtown, and we were parking, and the kids, there's the university is right there. And so the girls were all dressed up in they were crossing the street in these beautiful ball gowns. And it was the prom. And I didn't know that. And the boys are all dressed up and everybody's just having a great time. And they just look so beautiful and wonderful. And, I said to Kenneth, we need to get out more often and go downtown and look at the young people. I mean, in other words, they're living their lives and doing what they need to do. And yeah, there is impending doom. That, like you said, there's always impending doom with humanity. And like I said in this poem, biting each other's throats, monkeys biting each other's throats, but at the same time we're dancing with each other and loving each other. And so many people that I know are so fabulous. There's just fantastic people in this world. And so I don't know. I think we're gonna get through it. It's just that I think the burden of history, that we're living in the 21st century. It's the burden of history and all that's come before us. Kind of, can't we do better than this?
Mm-hmm.
It's.
Yeah, definitely. Let's hear another poem from the book. What's up next?
What's up next is so we'll have a little bit, it'll be a little lighter. Although, death is impending doom is always, it's always in there. It might be the nature of poetry, right? Bonanza. Amanda shows me my bones, a picture of my spine, ghost-like, snake-like, like it could rattle. I say, Amanda, it looks crooked. Why is that? She shrugs. You're not the only one. Your bone density's fine. You can go now. My plebeian spine walks me toward the mammogram room where I flop my boob onto the plastic tray. Flop is not exactly accurate concerning these tater tots. Darlene tussles with them, trying to yank what's barely there and squash it under the plate. Wait, I say, trying not to yell. Darlene waits, complimenting me on my earrings. I explain where I bought them in case she'd like a pair. And she asks if I'm ready, and before I answer, my flesh is smashed and splayed into place. I'm told not to breathe. The machine whirs. My spine curves even more weirdly. I am bones hung with a hunk of I am bones hung with a hunk of tissue, muscle, blood. I am not the only one who rattles and spins on the wheel of living's roulette. And finally, Darlene says, you can go now, as she stares at a computer screen. Is her expression alarmed? Or maybe her mouth is just slightly crooked. I stand straight and naked from the waist up, except for my earrings. The room holds slabs of concrete where the body is a dumb animal searching for a way out. Bloused, I elevate her from the basement and walk outside into a bonanza of sunshine. The crowded street, the amazing meat of us, the jostling bones of us, the creaking, the sloshing, the man carrying his baby against his chest in a sash as if he's holding eggs while riding a unicycle. The old lady pushing an older lady in a wheelchair so slowly the universe could be redesigned before they cross the street to the storefront, brimming with apricots and artichokes. Doesn't take X-ray eyes to see something inside us all, like a secret I wish we'd tell without fear, leaning close, nearly kissing the other's ear.
Yeah, and that's a beautiful poem of praise and celebration and humor too. I love so many images there, Susan. That was Bonanza from Susan's new book, Monster Mash. And one of the things I want to talk a lot about, because I saw that you had with Jimmy Pappas, I think it was, a past guest on the Rattlecast too, a workshop on humor in poetry. And I love, as an editor, I just want more humor always. Like, it's one of the things, there was one time, just many years ago, and it was just one comment somebody left on Facebook, but they said to a Rattle poem, this is why I stopped reading poetry, because it's all so dark. And and it's just true that the vast majority of poems, because we're dealing with, poems are sort of a problem-solving tool, is what they really are. They're a way of understanding our lives, and so they tend to orient themselves toward problems, and so they end up being the darker things in our experience that we're trying to tease and figure out. And yet, just having poems and, poems of praise and joy like Mary Oliver, or poems with poets with humor like Billy Collins, they're the most popular. People like reading them. And yet we publish all these dark poems that tend not to go in positive places. And humor is a big part of that. And so I'm really curious to hear your thoughts, not just on why humor is important, but how to go about making poems funny on the page. I mean, there's some great examples in that. Like, I love the turn from the holding the baby, like someone carrying eggs on a unicycle. Like, there's the surprise twist of that, which was wonderful. Also, earlier in the poem, words like flop are just funny inherently because they're onomatopoetic in a way, and that makes, so there's certain sort of tricks and techniques to get humor into poems. So I'm really curious how you approach adding humor to poetry.
Oh boy. Yeah. That's a tough question. Yeah, we talked about that in the workshop with Jimmy, and how do I do it? Actually, in a way, I almost have to stop myself from trying to be funny. It's something that I want to do, and the humor is something that I just want to get in there for some reason. And I'm so drawn to poets, Charles Simic, long ago, and of course he's a very serious poet too. Tony Hoagland, well, Sharon Olds. Sharon Olds is a very, she writes about very serious subjects, but she's always trying to get the humor there. I wouldn't call it trying. I mean, I'd really say that it's a matter of the way you're kind of looking at the world. I mean, I tend to look at the world and see the funny thing. I guess one of the greatest quotes I ever read was by a playwright named Sean O'Casey, and he said, life is lyrical in its essence, comic in its existence, and tragic in its fate. And I read that in college, I think, and I was just so blown away by that. I went, well, there it is. That's everything that you read and everything I want to write. I want to write lyrically because life is so lyrical. I mean, you look at a sunset, or you look at the dawn, or you look at a baby's face, or the man, but the man on the unicycle, is funny. And my small tater tot of a boob, being smashed, trying to be squished under a plate, I mean, but at the same time, I'm being checked out for cancer, so, and tragic in its fate. I mean, and comic in its existence. Basically, she's checking me out whether I'm going to die or not. And then I'm talking about, she likes my earrings. All this stuff is going on simultaneously all the time. The lyrical and the comic and the tragic. It's just going on all the time. And I was brought up in a family where it was kind of like that. I mean, there were tragic things going on. Most of the time, there were very funny things going on. And then, I mean, hilarious. My parents were hilarious. And we had lots of jokes going on. And then there were very sad things. And then absolutely gorgeous, beautiful things. My mother made clothing that was so beautiful, but we played tennis, the beauty of a tennis court and people playing tennis. I don't know, for some reason, it's just something that's in my blood. But I think it's in all of our blood, and because that is what life is. So I think it's just a matter of reading a lot of poetry, more poetry maybe that tries to incorporate, more humor. And as soon as you do that, people just start writing. They can incorporate it themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I always find etymologies interesting, and comedy comes from komos, through all the way from Proto-Indo-European, which is praise. It's actually a type of praise. And when you think about the absurdity of life, which you mentioned before, it's something that so much of poetry is about paying attention to things. But if you're not paying attention to the absurdity too, you're like missing a whole layer of existence. And so part of it is just praising that, like praising the strange things that come up either out of your own mind, which I'm not sure if you ever saw somebody holding eggs while riding a unicycle, but maybe you did. But or the things you notice that are absurd, and so holding on to those, is it something that comes to you in the playfulness of writing the poem? Is it your imagination that you're noticing the strangeness, or do you are you attuned to it all the time, looking for things that you can find that have that element because you notice them?
Well, um, one of the things as a poet, yeah, actually, now I feel something more practical is coming to mind, about getting more humor into a serious poem, or many poets do this, and many poets, maybe all poets, and they've talked about it. But keeping a notebook of imagery, I keep a notebook. I've kind of let go of it for a while, but I just always look for images, to grab images. And in fact, I can't remember right now the person who showed me this, but sometimes I'll have a whole notebook where I have things I see, things I've heard, things that somebody has said, things that I'm thinking about, and I just do a little square and put those in there. And I don't make any commentary about that. They're not connected to anything. It's just like today, what did I see? What did I hear? What did somebody, because people say the funniest things, what did somebody say? And they say profound things too. And I don't know, if you just do that, you start to really pay attention to the incredible the mash. We're going to get back to the mash, the incredible mix of everything that's going on around you all the time. And maybe some days are more, maybe there's not as much that's interesting some days than others. But if you go out into the world, if you get up in the morning and you just go out into the world walking or driving your car, or wherever you go, there's just so much stuff going on. And it's absurd, it's lovely, it's awful, and it's boring. But even really boring things can be very funny. So or they can be deeply tragic. I don't know. So I mean, it's really a matter, like you just said, of paying attention and also writing it down. And then later on, you can go back and say, oh, well, what could I do with that? Or,
Mm-hmm. So would you say that notebook you have, or those many notebooks, I assume, is it something that you go to in the middle of a poem, or is it more inspiration for a poem? Because one of the wonderful things we saw, especially I think with all three poems really, is how much movement you have within your poems. Like you're one place, then you go somewhere else, and with a really distant leap to a different thought and a different image. And there's a lot of movement from place to place. Is that part of the writing process of going to those notebooks, or is it more that those are inspiration when you don't know where to go? Are they the start of poems, or is it something you consult in the middle?
Well, now, yeah, I think I'm just really fascinated with collage and also with being more wild in my poetry. I don't want to bore the reader, so I just really want to, I want to jump. And the people, I think one of the poets who taught me the most about jumping was Dean Young. Dean, I was just such a huge fan of Dean's for so long, and he just taught me the leap by just reading him. He just taught that to me. And then also Bob Hickok, really, Kim Adenizio. I mean, they're all leapers like that, and then you have to figure out how is this thing hanging together.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm more interested in just not making complete. Well, I do hang on to the logical sense. I do hang on to the narrative, but I don't. If it's only narrative, it's going to be so boring. So I just make myself make leaps, and then if they don't work and I fall off the cliff, then I have to patch it up and figure that out. What I do is in my process, I start writing. Usually I read a lot first before I start writing. And then I start writing something. Maybe I have something on my mind or something in my heart, or maybe I have nothing. The worst is when you have nothing. And then I just, put down a sentence, and then maybe it starts just going, and nothing's happening. So I look into another writer's poem that I'm really interested in and see what's going on in that line. Maybe I look into a notebook and see what, some of my images, see if some of that. Yeah, it's really like, I'm almost going to say it's like sewing something together and making a collage. And then it might just be this big mess, but then I can go in and see what is really at the heart of it. Where is the heart to this? What is this really about? And then dig deeper into that. Also, I have to say, I did that poem was based on coming out of Bonanzas. And this book was going to be titled Bonanza. I almost titled it Bonanza. And then I just felt like Monster Mash was much more pertinent to the darker poems in it. But I did see the unicyclist. He was carrying a baby.
Oh, wow.
He was carrying a baby.
Wow.
And that was true. That was on MacArthur Avenue coming out of Kaiser in Oakland.
Oh, wow.
which is one of the worst neighborhoods.
Wow. Well, that's fascinating. I really didn't think that was going to be a real memory of yours. So that's really cool.
It's really not one of the worst neighborhoods in the world, but it's not, and the apricots and the artichokes were there. I mean, it was all there.
Well, let's hear another poem. The End of the World is next.
Okay. Well, this is a longer one, and this poem is in the middle of the book. So I think that's a perfect place for it, really, because it's kind of a poem that brings a lot of the elegies and things about family together. The End of the World. A woman was killed by a car as she jogged across an intersection. A friend of hers I play tennis with said, "Can you believe it?" I put my arms around her as we stood on the court, and she cried into my shoulder. I didn't tell her how my mother died in a car crash after buying towels on sale. You'd think we'd be used to death coming out of the blue, like lightning striking on a sunny day, but we're always surprised. Then my mother's accident became a story I told, so many times as if that could bring her back. The story was like the St. Christopher medal tucked safely in her purse that a policeman found in the middle of the freeway, and that I carried in my pocket until who knows what happened to it. I traveled all over Europe and even went to a place, if you can believe it, called the End of the World in southern Portugal on the Vicentine coast, stood on cliffs 200 feet high, and looked at what explorers thought was the edge of the flat earth, and I could understand why. I was thousands of miles from home, wandering beaches and piers, going into stone churches when no one was there, lighting candles, although my belief in God flitted around like a bat in the rafters before it folded its wings and disappeared in the darkness. At night in my hostel room, I ate sardines out of the tin and read the Tao Te Ching, staining the pages with red wine and oil. The idea of the Tao was consoling. An empty container that can never be emptied and can never be filled. Darkness within darkness, the gateway to all understanding. What in the world did that mean? But it was like a kind of hope without hope, so I could believe it. A man I dated once or twice in California came to visit. We had a beautiful time in bed. He was confused when after a week I wanted him to leave. At the airport, I apologized and kissed him goodbye, and we kept kissing. He said, "Why am I leaving? I can't believe this." A few years later, I realized it was because no one he loved had died. The universe is forever out of our control. The world is sacred. I went to see my father. In the restaurant, the dining room was dark, even though it was lunchtime. The little candle on the table, trying hard. It had been over a year since we'd seen each other or talked about her. My father's eyes were sober and clear. He said, "How's the sandwich?" We were surrounded by velvet paintings on the walls of the hobo clown Emmett Kelly, his red nose, his sad mouth, his crushed bowler hat. In one of the paintings, a monarch butterfly rested on the hat's brim. I decided to take that as a sign for whether I could believe it or not, happened next.
Yeah, another beautiful collage-like poem. That was The End of the World from Susan Browne's new book, Monster Mash. And we can see just what we were talking about before, the details and the sense of movement through different things, like things calling back memories, moving in time and space. So much goes on in all of these poems. What is it like? You mentioned it being like collage that you sew together. How do you go about the sewing process? Poems like these seem like they must be many drafts of, you throw something in and then it doesn't quite work and then you take it out and you move it down here. What's that process like for these kind of poems?
Agonizing. Well, The End of the World, this poem was coming from a long way. I went to this place. My mother died in 1989, and I went to teach in 1990 in England, in London. My school, the community college, Diablo Valley College in Pleasant Hill, California, where I taught for 34 years, I was able to teach in their London program. So it was really wonderful that I could go away. I was so much in grief, and it was a good time, though, to go somewhere else, really. And so I went there, and then after the semester, I went traveling all over, and I went to this place because I had never heard of it, and I went, oh my God, I have to go to the end of the world. I mean, I have to go there, and it's an absolutely gorgeous place. It's in a town called Sagers. It's called Sagers, and it's where there's Mediterranean and the Atlantic, and then it's at the very, very western tip of Portugal. And you look out, and you can understand why the explorers thought that the world was flat and that this was the end. So that was in 1990, and this poem was written in it's 2025, so maybe this poem was written in starting to write it in 2022. So maybe it was finished in 2022. But I guess I'm trying to say is this particular poem came from a long way in my subconscious. Mm-hmm. And I also wrote a memoir for 7 years about my family that never got published, but not for lack of me trying, but which was a lot about all this, many things in my family. And I worked so hard on that book, and I never did the section about going to the end of the world, which I thought was so important. I never put that in the memoir. And I thought, you know what, I have got to write a poem about the end of the world. So I think that, first of all, it just been in my body and in my mind for so long. And then I took Ellen Bass's workshop. Ellen Bass has done a series of many fabulous workshops. And in 2020, I took one, and I think it was about Frank Gaspar. She was using Frank Gaspar's poems, and there was just something in his poems that just made me able to write this one.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah. Why do you think you didn't include the end of the world in the memoir? That's interesting.
Why didn't I include it? Mm-hmm. I think I just didn't have the ability. I don't think I had. Well, I'm sure it was in there. Actually, I'm sure it was in there. But different editors or different people that I was working with said, this is not flying. This is not working. You have too many things going on in this memoir. I mean, I had to take a number of things out. There were just too many things.
Well, that's interesting because it's what makes, the poems sing so much is because so much is going on in every one of the poems. So it's an interesting comparison.
Well, maybe, yeah. I was finally able to do it in a poem.
Yeah. Well, I should say at this point, if you haven't clicked the like button yet, please do. As always, there are way more people watching live than have clicked like so far, and clicking like really helps. So please do click like right now. Also, if you have any questions for Susan, put them in the chat window on YouTube. If you're watching on Facebook, I don't really look at Facebook anymore because it doesn't work as well as YouTube. So find YouTube, hopefully. But if you have any questions, put question in there like some people have so far. It helps me see them on the whole list of chats, and I'll pass some questions along too. There was already one really interesting question. Going back to the humor topic, Brian O'Sullivan wanted to know, he said, I love what you're saying about the comic and the lyrical. Are you happy if a poem stays funny throughout, or do you feel a need to have a funny poem turn towards something overtly serious? And you mentioned that, I can't remember what are the three? It was comedy. One's comedy, one's trashy, and one's the other. But do they all have to have all the elements going, or can a poem, exist in the humor alone?
Oh, that's a really good question. I'm trying to think if I've ever written a poem that only stayed funny. I don't sit down and go, I'm going to write a funny poem. I never sit down and say I'm going to write a funny poem. I mean, I don't. I sit down to write what, I don't, and I don't sit down and say, oh, I'm going to write an incredibly lyrical poem. I'm going to write the most tragic poem that anyone has ever seen on the face of the earth. I don't do that. I write. Yeah. And then I try to see what I can make of it. Mm-hmm. What is the funniest poem? Well, okay, I'm going to read. I think the next poem.
Yeah, the next poem
is actually the funniest poem and I take that back. This poem was inspired by a very funny thing that I saw, and then I wrote it, and it made me laugh the entire time I wrote it.
Oh, that's great.
And it was my intention to be funny. Okay, so I argued with myself. But if you read through the book, there's humor in almost all of the poems in some ways, but no, some are very serious too. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So do you want me to read that one?
Yeah, go ahead and read it. It's still doing.
Okay, I don't know if I answered. I probably didn't answer that question very well.
Well, I did. I think you contradicted yourself and then were showing an example of why. But that's great. That is great. And it's perfect timing, too, for this question. It wasn't planned, but it's perfect.
All right. Still doing it. I know something's cooking. When you give me that look, your eyes appearing slightly crossed above your CPAP mask, which you start taking off, the mask that saves you from death by apnea, but makes you look like a snorkeler from dreamland or an escapee from a tear gas fight, and I'm excited. But I've got my own gear to deal with, especially in winter, tugging off my socks and grappling with my flannel pajamas and beret and scarf. Yes, it's that cold in here because you don't like the heat on. when you sleep, and we've been arguing about this since we met, but we're getting fired up. I hear the farting, whooshing sound of air going out of the CPAP box while I uncap the bottle of Slickwood, setting it on the windowsill, glancing at the label that says botanically infused, which I've learned means we won't die if we get it in our mouths. And I negotiate the physics once again of how to shove Slickwood upward as we move around enthusiastically but carefully so as not to hurt your disintegrating discs and pinched nerves or my sore hip and wrecked knee. And we're almost in place like trapeze artists who've had an accident when the cat jumps up on the bed and nestles between my feet and I'm on top of you despite my bad knee for better aim and leverage, with one foot on its toes, trying to keep my meniscus from hitting the mattress, and the cat's purring. And it's hard to concentrate, but by God, we're going to do this. And we do it. Our 30 years together, not exactly disappearing because they're stuck on our faces. Oh my God, hallelujah. And I slowly roll off, and we lie side by side, asking each other, are you okay? Smiling at the ceiling, satisfied and proud, as if we've won a prize. The cat, ignoring us as usual, licks her privates.
Yeah, that was a really fun poem again. Another poem from Monster Mash that was still doing it. And it's always interesting to me. What's funny about things so often is the honesty of them. Like, it's that they're true that makes them funny. And they're things that, it's the audaciousness of speaking a truth sometimes that makes the humor. And then it's so interesting that that's the same thing that makes other kinds of poetry that's, heartfelt and tear-jerking type poetry. It's like the rawness and the authenticity of the storytelling that we react to in this bodily way, where, sometimes it's like, or sometimes it's like a tear, and sometimes it's laughter, like a spontaneous outburst of reacting to that. And how do you think that those two are related? It's just fascinating to me that we do this thing called poetry, and there's so much, poetry. The goal is to enact something on the body of somebody reading this story that we're telling. And so it's just fascinating to me how the sadness and the humor are related. How do you think about that?
Well, I would say that's my entire existence. I would that's why the poems are the way they are. This, like, I think I'm a very sad person, actually. I have deep sadness. But I have great joy too. My sadness has always been with me. It's almost like a companion, I'd say. So I feel like I've written a lot of very deeply sad poems, but I also think life, like you said, is so incredibly funny. And because Kenneth, my husband, could die. He could die from this sleep apnea. And so that's very serious. And, the fact that he finally got diagnosed was fantastic because, it's very dangerous. And yet, there we are. And then we're trying to, and of course, at this moment of romance, he was not wearing his CPAP mask. I put that, I put that in there. But what inspired the poem was I'm home alone and we get the mail and he's at work and there's this box. And so I thought it was for me and I tear it apart and I'm just terrible. I just tear the box apart and I go, oh, it's a CPAP mask. It was a new mask for him. I go, oh no, this is for Kenneth. And so I start putting it back in the box and I lifted it up and then I saw this photograph. I saw this photo on the package and it was a young couple, not people our age, but a younger couple. And he he didn't have the mask on. He was holding it, and she was gazing at him with such love and romance, and he was gazing at her, and they're holding this horrible, not horrible, but this snorkeler from Dreamland mask, with the hose coming off of it. And I thought, oh yeah, it's just so romantic. And then that was it. And then I had, I will tell everybody, yes, I bought this thing. People said, oh, get Slickwood. I go, what's Slickwood? And, that's a real thing. You can look it up, and it's good. And so I just thought that whole thing was hilarious too. And it truly is botanically infused, so you have, you have to read the bottle. And so these are things that go everything. I mean, I'll never forget Gary Snyder. They were talking, I was 20 years old at I think the university. I was at the University of Colorado for a while, and he came to speak, and he said, a poet has to know everything. A poet has to know everything, and a poet has to put everything in a poem. Everything can go in the poem. And I don't know, it was just fantastic. First of all, I felt overwhelmed because I was only 20 or so, and I thought, oh my God, I have to know everything. But everything is game for poetry, especially now. And that is, I think, what you were talking about before, the tears and the laughter, the deep sadness and the joy. I mean, the humanity that is in poetry, especially as it's gone along through our history of poetry, is so fabulous today. I mean, some people are writing the most amazing things about who they are and how they feel and what it's like to be them. And poetry is the thing that can bring that one of the things that can bring us together. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, really well said, Susan. Let's hear another poem. I want to make sure we get to a good number.
Okay. All right. Well, this kind of, like I said, there's poems about aging, and yeah. In the winter of my 67th year, and I have to give a nod to my older sister Cheryl, who she would talk to me as we were getting older, and she would tell me all these things that are going to happen to us, as we get older, and I would say, oh well, thank you so much, for telling me all these horrible things that are going to be happening to us. But they were also kind of funny things. In the winter of my 67th year, I feel the cold more. I stay in bed longer to linger in my dreams, where I'm young and falling in and out of love. I couldn't imagine then being this old. Only old people are this old. Looking at my friends, I wonder, wow, do I look like that? Today, I wore my new beanie with the silver gray pom-pom and took a walk in the fog. I thought I looked cute in that hat, but nobody noticed. Maybe a squirrel, although he didn't say anything. When was the last time I got a compliment? Now it's mostly someone pointing out I have food stuck in my teeth. Did my teeth grow? They seem bigger. And so do my feet. Everything's larger except my lips. Lipstick smudges outside the lines or travels to my teeth. Then there's my neck. The wattle. An unfortunate word and should have never been invented. These winter months are like open coffins for frail oldsters to fall in. I once had a student who believed we can be any age we want in the afterlife. I'm desperate to be 50. 6 was also a good year. I saw snow for the first time at my great uncle's house in Schenectady. My sister and I stood at the window. I can still remember the thrill of a first time, a marvel. Life would be full of firsts. I met my first love in winter. He was a hoodlum and way too old for me, 17. I was 15. I could tell he'd had sex or something close to it. He had a burning building in his eyes. He wore a black leather jacket, so cool and greasy, matched his hair. He broke up with me, although there wasn't much to break. All we'd done was sit together on the bus, breathing on each other. It was my first broken heart. I walked in the rain, listening to Wichita linemen on my transistor radio. I need you more than want you, which confused me, but I felt it all over my body, and that was a first too. Oh, world of marvels, I'm entering antiquity for the first time. Ruined columns, sun-blasted walls, dusty rubble, wind-blown husks. I'm wintering. There's nothing wrong with it. A deep field of silence, the grass grown over, and now the snow.
Yeah. Again, beautiful combination of humor and heartfelt poetry there. That was in the winter of my 67th year from Susan Browne's book, Monster Mash. And in the chat, everyone's just loving your poetry, Susan. There was a question on a more technical aspect from Diamantiro, who wants to know, how do you decide how long you want your poetic lines to be? For you, what is the meaning / purpose of a line break? And I wanted to ask about this too, so I'll expand on that a little bit, because you have sort of two types of poems in here, where one has no punctuation, and each line, each first line is capitalized, and so they end up sort of being like a statements coming out. And then the other has regular punctuation too. And they're really two different types. And the line breaks have a lot to do with that too, because the line breaks serve as punctuation in those former poems. So how do you, as Diamantiro asks, like, how do you know how long you want the lines to be and how to structure the poem in those ways?
So the audience is seeing the poem?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, good. Yeah, I thought so. Yeah. Yeah, because that's really important. Because there's a lot of craft going on in, if I do say so myself, in where I break the line, and also with the words and how they're chiming together, and the internal rhyme, all these things that I'm working with. Yeah, the line is a unit for me. The line is a unit of thought, really. However, I break it depending on the music, on the music, or the syllables, the feel, the rhythm of the line. And if I look through the book, yeah, you're right. There's long lines in there, but there's not really. I would say Science Matters is one of the ones that has the shortest lines, but my lines are fairly long in many of the poems. And that's just something that I have loved working with since I started reading C.K. Williams. He works with the long line, and The End of the World has long lines and has the couplets. I really love couplets. I love the tercet. I don't work so much in quatrains, but I will. And I really love the long sentence that still doing it is one long sentence. And I just want you to know how hard I worked on that to make that one long sentence that really worked syntactically and grammatically, because it is legally one sentence. And I'm kind of doing that. I'm doing that a little in the winter of my 67th year. I'm doing that same thing. You're right. There's no punctuation in this one. I loved in this book experimenting with that. I have some that have punctuation and I have some that don't. What makes me decide which way to do that? It's really, I have to say, it's really intuitive. It has to do when the poem just gets started. And for the most part, I really like not using punctuation in the beginning, and seeing what that does to the line, the unit of thought. And, I love kind of the mystery of not using punctuation way back from W.S. Merwin. But then some poems absolutely need punctuation. I didn't read the poem about my father in here that I love. I love my own poem, but I love this because I tried so hard to write a good poem about my father, really good poem for him. It's called King. And that was written without any punctuation, and then Martha Rhodes at Four-Way said, "Oh no, this poem needs it needs punctuation." And I was being sort of resistant for a minute, and then I went, she knows what she's talking about, so I'm gonna really look at that. And I tried it, and I went, yes. So it's really in your process of writing. I think try it all. And I don't feel bad should I feel bad that some poems have punctuation, some don't have punctuation? I feel like the way I crafted them, they absolutely work. And I like the freedom of deciding, and that which way it should go with which poem.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to stick to that because I thought, in my next book, I think I'm going to be more standard. I'm going to use it. I'm going to use one thing or the other. And I went, no. I went, no, I'm not going to do that. So when I'm revising these next poems, I'll see how that feels. Yeah, mm-hmm. I hope that's a decent answer. But it's really about the feel of the poem and maybe not deciding too soon what you're going to do.
Yeah. Well, I really love what you said about each line. I think you said being a unit of thought. And there's those so many poems that don't really work very well. They have these lines that don't add anything. And a lot of times I'll say like, every line should push the poem forward or like move the poem in some way. But then I never really thought about it as a unit of thought. And if you don't have a whole thought within a line, that's really what makes the line empty. So that's a really interesting thing to point out.
In this poem.
Yeah, even the shorter lines here, they all add something and have an extra thought to them. And so, even if it's like a modification of the last thought in a little line, I closed the book already, so I can't pull up. But there were some lines that did that, where it's like a little extra thought, on top of what you just said, where it changes it too. And so, so you can really clearly look at these poems that each line does have some kind of unit of mental thingness behind it. So that's a really interesting way to put it.
Well, yeah, in the winter of my 67th year, the first line is, I feel the cold more. The second line, I stay in bed longer. But I didn't want, there's no punctuation because I feel like they're together, but yet they're on separate lines. And I feel the cold more. I want the reader to feel that. Yeah, I stay in bed longer, to linger in my dreams. But probably when I was writing it, I do a lot of writing sort of in prose. It's in lines, but then sometimes it's just a big paragraph. Like you're doing the haiku and the haven, I can just do a whole thing of prose and then I'll break the prose up into lines and start making it more musical. That's a lot of my process. Mm-hmm. In a notebook, I can just have this whole big page of there's no lineation. There's nothing going on like craft like that. And then when I put it onto the computer, then I start to see how, like sewing, mm-hmm. like creating, like the collage, how what are the decisions I can make here? But in composition, in initial composition, I almost always like to write in a notebook. Because it's your feeling, it's your arm, it's your heart to your arm, it's your hand, and you just go wild. You go wild. And Tom, I've just learned from so many people, so many other poets, teaching me to do things like that, like write 6 pages of just nothing, just write 6 pages in your journal and do it for a week. And don't look at it, and then go back and look at it and see what you've got.
Yeah. Well, let's do 2 more poems. We'll do a poem, quick question, and then the last poem. What do you want to read as your second to last?
Oh, 2 more poems. Wow. Well, do you have any requests?
Well, we have Of a Million Earths. I think that's a good one. Then we can end on the last poem in the book.
You're right. I have another one. I forgot. Yeah. I have. We have 2 more. Okay, yeah. I thought we were done. Okay. Of a Million Earths. And this book is actually dedicated to my parents in memoriam. And I wanted to write that, as I said years ago when I wrote that memoir for 7 years, which was after my mother's death, but my father was still alive. I wanted to dedicate that book to my parents, but that didn't happen. So this one is it. Of a million Earths, 1 million Earths could fit inside the sun. The thought of a million Earths makes me want to be a bee falling asleep inside a flower. It's a fact. Sometimes while gathering nectar, bees get tired and put their 3 pairs of legs over their 5 eyes to block the sun, which is halfway through its journey of 10 billion years. My mother loved sunsets at the beach. I remember once in Santa Barbara, our chairs close together on the sand. There's no way to fact check this, or that we chewed juicy fruit gum and talked about things we'd never shared before, or that I kept looking at the freckles on her knees because they made me feel peaceful as a bee dreaming inside a dahlia. 1 billion years since that day with my mother, or seems like it. Her middle name was Marie. I brought a boombox to the church to play Ave Maria. A cold morning, although the sun was shining, on the only known planet in the universe where life exists.
Yeah, another beautiful poem that was once again Of a Million Earths from Susan Browne's new book, Monster Mash. So I was wondering, you mentioned just a little bit ago, you wanted to write a good poem about your father. And it made me wonder, what you think of as a good poem. Like, how do you define when a poem is good versus not good? Because it's something, a lot of people don't even want to admit that there's such thing as a good or a bad poem, but I think it's true. So how do you define, or what goes into being a good poem?
Oh, just a second. I have the sunlight. Yeah. And, and just to get back to our, our talk about humor and seriously funny poems, and I will get to that question. It's such a big one, such a big one. This poem has a lot of delightful, the funny things of the bee, the bee and his 5 legs, and and then the boombox, but the poem is an elegy. I mean, the poem is a sad poem about the day, my mother and the death and the funeral. But, that really happened. So things like that. I mean, bringing a boombox to the church to play Ave Maria, these things in life that they're there. They're there for everybody. And that's where the humor comes in through the reality. Yeah. Good poem from my father. I guess what I meant by that was, my father and I had a difficult relationship part of our lives together. Part of our lives, it was not difficult. It was really quite wonderful. And then he lived long enough, so it got good again. So it really was an amazing, wonderful journey. Also tragic and sad, but also, funny and beautiful. So I wanted to write a poem for him that had all those elements. But I wanted to, but I can't just make myself do that. Mm-hmm. So I was fortunate enough for this particular poem in the book King to come together, and that happened. And why do I call it a good poem? I guess for me, I meant that it's a good poem for my life with him. That's what I meant. And I feel like I was, but also more technically, there's no, I was able to get in the difficulty between us. Mm-hmm. In the poem, the difficulty is there, but the journey, the whole journey, I think, is in that poem. And that's why I call it good technically, because I think the reader who doesn't know me at all, doesn't care about me, and doesn't know my father or care about him, I feel like I was able to make this individual thing universal, because many people have had, difficulties with their relationships, whether it be with their parents or their spouse or their siblings or friends or whoever. And I just think that the whole story is in that. And to be able to put all of that into a few pages, because that poem's got short lines and it's 2 pages, I just felt like, wow, I did it.
Yeah, well, that's really cool to hear. Well, let's close out. We're up on time. Let's close out with the last poem in the book, Blue Disco.
Okay, Blue Disco. Okay, so here's another one. The book was going to be called Bonanza. It might have been called Blue Disco. There was another title, and then there was Monster Mash. So Blue Disco. Sunlight after 3 days of kiss each drop of rain as it falls. Sunlight on my hand as I take my racket out of its jacket. Sunlight on the ball, like a ball of sunlight. Sunlight as we decide who'll serve first and which side. And she tells me her mother died. Alzheimer's, then COVID, nowhere to take her for 3 weeks. Too many corpses waiting to be cremated. Sunlight on her face as she says this. Sunlight on her collarbone, shiny with sweat. Sunlight on the small silver hoop in her ear. On our breathing together through words like, I'm sorry, it's okay. She was 92. Sunlight on the bench where we sit after the game. And she says yesterday she finally got her mother's ashes. And we're silent. And out of the blue, the Bee Gees, staying alive. How can we help it? We get up and shimmy and shake.
Yeah, well, great way to close out the book and the interview. Thanks so much for being here, Susan, and sharing poems from Monster Mash. Been really fun to talk and really valuable, too. I appreciate you being here.
Well, thank you, Tim. It was really fun. And is there any other question from a reader?
Well, I did have one question for you, which I thought of to ask, and there's a lot of tennis in this book. Have you switched to pickleball yet? Because all my tennis friends, it's impossible to play tennis anymore because they all just want to play pickleball. So I kept wondering that every time tennis came up.
Well, I indeed play pickleball, of course. Yeah, I love pickleball. And so the next book will have pickleball poems.
Okay. Well, that's good to hear. Thanks so much again, Susan, for being here. It was really fun to talk and great poems, too.
All right. Thank you so much, Tim.
Yep. Thanks so much. Yeah, once again, that was Susan Browne with a new book, Monster Mash. You can find all of Susan's books at her website, susanbrownepoems.com. And that's Browne with an E. So SUSANBROWNE, poems.com. So
and I want people to know that if they'd like to work with me, I do one-on-one private workshops online.
Oh, very great too. Yeah, so find that there as well, plus all the books. Yeah, thanks again, Susan, for being a guest.
Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, and that was Susan Browne. Now we're going to take a quick break and go to our prompt lines. We also have the revealing of our prompt poet of the month from last month. It's going to be a familiar face, surprise poem. So we'll get to that in just a minute. The poet is loading in right now as well. So we're going to take a quick break and get back to the prompt lines. Now, if you'd like to share a poem, here's how that works for the prompt lines. It's got to be a poem about this week's prompt, which was write a poem in which someone makes a mistake that leaves an impression. So that's your prompt for this week. If you have a poem to share, it's got to be a 1-page max. And again, we're going to say the max time on camera should be about 3 minutes. So if it's like a full poem, takes up a lot of words on the page, just kind of jump right in and get the poem through because that's about 3 minutes. If it's a shorter poem, feel free to chat about how the poem came to be and stuff. But we don't want to go over that because we want to have room for everybody. Now, if you'd like to share a poem, all you got to do is go to the chat window on Facebook or YouTube, find the Zoom link. and then join us on the Zoom. But email your poem first to promptlines@rattle.com. That's promptlines, all one word, at rattle.com. Send your poem there so I can show it on the screen, and then join the Zoom. But only if you want to share a poem. If you want to just watch and enjoy everybody else's poems, the best place to do that is right where you are, because then you can see the poems as the poets are reading them. So if you don't have one, sit tight and watch on YouTube or Facebook. But if you want to share one, go to the Zoom, and we'll be right back with more poetry. And we're back. Thanks for your patience. We're here with our associate editor, prompt poems editor, and my wife, Katie Dozier. How you doing, Katie?
Great. I really enjoyed that discussion, and great poems, too.
Yeah, they definitely were. Yeah, great book to go over. And I think, it's getting to the point, we're getting a lot of repeat guests, I think, because a lot of people's publicists are saying, go back on the Rattlecast, because people are buying a lot of books, which is always good,
If I had a publicist, I bet they'd be saying that,
they
too.
would. Well, that's the thing. I am getting a lot more emails from, publicists now
Yeah.
about being out, which is a good thing. Okay, so let's see. So the prompt poet of the month is here.
Yes.
And we postponed this for a week to make sure we could get them on, which is fun too. So what do you want to say about this poet and poem?
First, I want to say I touched on this last week when we waited to announce the winner, but the poems were really excellent last month. So I hope that somehow this month can at least measure up to that, because I was really impressed. The poems were great. If you got a top-tiered rejection, it means more than it normally does, so be more excited about it, I guess, than normal for sure, because the poems were really great. So thanks, everyone, for writing them. But I think the winning poem, we can go ahead and say, was written by our own Clayton Clark.
Hey, Clayton, are you there? Hello, it's great to see you.
Hey.
Hi.
Hi, Tim and Katie.
Yeah.
Well,
Nice
congratulations. This poem
Thank
is,
you.
I love it very much. And I think it's okay to say, too, you had multiple poems this month that were excellent. So even more impressive there, even though I agonized and eventually, picked this wonderful poem. But thank you for writing it.
Oh, sweet. Thank you. And after Susan Browne, well, it's not very funny, but her work is so amazing. I'm very happy to be here after her.
Well,
Thank
should we have her read the poem?
Yeah,
now?
let's
Okay.
go ahead
You
and
wanna go
share
ahead
it,
and read
please, if you would.
Okay.
Okay, so this was after the ekphrastic prompt to write a poem that the artist shares her first or last name. And so I wrote it about my brother.
Yeah, let's go ahead and share it.
Yeah.
Mm.
Hang on one
Okay,
second.
so this was
I'm hearing noise.
prompts.
Okay, there we go. Sorry about that.
Oh, no worries.
Yeah, make sure you're on mute and not you.
Not you, Clayton.
Everybody else on the Zoom, make sure you're muted. And if you have, just watch on the Zoom if you're on the Zoom. Don't watch the YouTube screen because there's a big delay. Okay. So anyway, go ahead, Clayton. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no worries. Okay, the lifeguard tower closed for winter.
Everybody else on the Zoom. Oh, hang on. Okay, don't unmute yourself.
If it happens again, you're getting called out.
Yeah, keep it. And I accidentally muted you, so you unmute yourself, Clayton Clark, because I accidentally. There you go.
Sorry, Clayton.
All right, sorry, Clayton.
No worries. No,
Okay,
no problem.
now we're good. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, we're
So let's
in.
hear this poem.
The lifeguard tower closed for winter. See that matador in the pastel colors of light? He strikes a fine figure ready to take on a bullfight. It might take a moment to notice beyond the blue swirl of cape, his weapons are merely scissors and a comb. A magician, the artist poised to cut and style. What can't be seen is what I see, my brother's long black coat that waves in the wind on that cold morning rising. See his dark, hard shoes sink in the sand on the beach where our family grew. This is where my sister and I release our mother's ashes to the waves. But my brother, the artist, seems a mosaic about to shatter. He just stands there.
Yeah, beautiful poem. And then we have the painting too, by your brother Clayton. And everybody at home is seeing this on the screen. But what a beautiful painting.
I'm glad they're seeing the painting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And so for those listening, it's a beautiful painting of a matador, but with scissors and a comb, which is fascinating too. And that painting is by Clayton's brother, of course, James Clark, who passed away in 2010. So this was for that prompt to write a poem, an ekphrastic poem about somebody who shares part of your name. And so what can you tell us about your brother and the painting, Clayton?
Well, I wish he had titled it. Could start there. But he had passed away before showing it. So I inherited a lot of his poems, and he was an incredible artist his entire life. And these are some of the most beautiful he's done. He did several of the matadors, and he had a sense of humor. And he also was so gentle that I feel like it really comes out in this painting. Some of his other paintings are not so gentle, but they're hanging in my house and he's gone, but he basically is following me around every day. So really what it was written for. And to keep him alive.
Yeah. And this poem really captured me too, because I think that when we have poems about grief, so often they stay in the current grief we're experiencing. But I think the true nature of grief is that it swirls back in around itself. So when you lose a person, you're experiencing the loss you ever had of every person you've known. And I think that your poem really captures that so well.
Oh, thanks so much, Katie. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I do usually put humor in some way in my poems, and this one it was what it was. So I'm glad he came through.
Yeah. Well, it's a beautiful poem, and it's going to be the poem of the day on Tuesday. We'll include the piece of art too, as well, by your brother. So thanks so much for sharing that. And
I
thanks for
have
sharing
to quickly add that I almost caused an accident when I read that I had actually won this prompt because I was driving my sister-in-law. I was in the passenger seat, and I went, and she said, "What? What's happening?" So I explained.
Oh.
Well, that's great.
Well, I'm very glad that no people were harmed in the acceptance of this poem. That's good to know too. Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Well,
thanks
thanks
so
again.
much.
Thanks for writing it and sharing it and having, written to the prompts. I always love getting to read your poems, so it's really special to have your poem for this month.
Oh, thank you. I love the prompts. And at first I was like, oh no, I can't write to prompts. And but it's been so, thanks so much.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks,
you,
Clayton.
Clayton.
Yeah, and once again, that was Clayton Clark. That's going to be Tuesday's poem. So if you aren't subscribed yet, sign up to get the poem of the day by email. All you got to do is go to rattle.com. At the very bottom in the footer, you'll say daily poem by email. You can sign up there, and then they get that poem in your inbox along with every other poem at, 5:30 Eastern time we put it up. So feel free to do that if you haven't yet, or check the website on Tuesday. Now we're going to go to the actual prompt for this week. And once again, to remind everybody, the prompt was write a poem in which someone makes a mistake that leaves an impression. And so where'd you go with that, Katie?
I went by kind of starting off by negating the validity of my own prompt.
No, that's
which
a
I
good
feel
place.
is a right I have as the person coming up with these prompts. So, okay, I'll pull it up. Okay. This is first aid kit. I don't know if I believe in mistakes, just in flip-flopping between states. When I tripped on the curb, my big sis consoled me, bleeding knees, but her kiss warmed me. Now, here's the sting of only having old pictures to cling to. Memories a trap for battered leaves blown in by some all-knowing breeze. Even the sun will leave an impression. At least moonlight's more of a question.
Yeah. So that's a beautiful poem and great rhymes there at the end and throughout. So I don't know, how did you conceive of this though? I'm wondering where the poem came from.
I wanted to write a poem in full rhyming couplets, and I started there, and then I edited it to make it more disguised that it's like that. And I was just thinking about things that made an impression. And for some reason, the first thing I thought of was skinning my knees when I was like 3. And as my dad was a photographer, we have pictures of this historic event. so I still can picture that event because he had the pictures. So thought about that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's really cool. Yeah, great poem. I love that. First aid kit.
Thanks.
Yeah, and so for mine, me and Katie are doing a Hyben crown, which we did last year, which was so much fun. We
During
decided
April.
to do it again during April,
Yeah.
like a National Poetry Month thing. So what we do is Katie writes a Hyben, and then the haiku at the end, we have to use those words in the next like prose or whatever portion of the Hyben. And so it continues like that through until then at the end of the month, we wrap it around and somehow make a Hyben or a haiku out of the words in the first section.
That
which
actually falls on you.
that falls on me
Because you're the last one to write this month. Because
that
I
goes,
started.
Yeah, because Katie starts because she's better at just jumping into a poem.
Well, that's sweet of you to say. I don't.
So anyway, so that's what we did. That's what we've been doing. And so I try to, if you look back at last April, I try to do the same thing because I'm writing like 3 or 4 poems a week, which is a lot for me. I usually don't
Yay,
get
it's
that
very
much.
exciting.
It's hard
We're
to make
really
that much
glad.
time. To
Yeah.
be honest. But so it's a good shove for April. But adding an extra poem on top of that's tough. So I try to get the prompt in.
That's
to
what
one,
I did
too.
last year. This year, I am trying to not allow myself to do
Yeah.
that every time. We'll see, though. But it's a good thing to do.
It
Like
is
it's
a
a
good-
double
okay.
prompt.
Yeah. So this was Katie's haiku. We'll start with that. The haiku that Katie had, this was her haiku for day 7, was finding people's good sides, Mohs surgery. And so Mohs surgery is where they slice off layers of moles to check if they're cancerous, and they see if they get everything.
Till they have clean margins.
Till they have clean
Yeah.
margins. And so that was a difficult one to put in. But
Yeah, I'm sorry. I kind of forgot like the assignment that I made. I was just like, "What's the haiku?" And then I handed it to you. Like, "All right, Katie, got Mohs surgery tomorrow." I see. Thanks.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, bro.
But fortunately, and I didn't know this. I think I mean it called back a memory eventually. I remember, but I don't remember this at first. That the Mohs scale is actually the hardness scale. It's called the Mohs scale. It was I think it was Friedrich Mohs, a German
Glad there was more than one Mohs
geologist
adding to history.
in the 1800s. Finally formalized this hardness scale where you could just scratch rocks against each other. But I realized scratching rocks is an impression. And so this became this
I
hybrid.
didn't, because I've read this before, but
Yeah.
I didn't know that makes sense.
So I figured that would work for this
Okay.
prompt. So here we go. This is called Too Soft. My eyes didn't widen in finding that the last rock in the Mohs hardness kit they handed out in 8th grade earth science was a real diamond. I didn't imagine the simple surgery of extracting its riches from the bottom cubby of the wooden bento box it came in, or how it would feel, heavy and hard in my side pocket. I could conceive of selling it in an alley behind the 7-Eleven and buying all the things I always wanted but never had. I was one of the good people. So when the teacher explained that it was industrial grade and practically worthless, I wasn't even relieved. Gypsum, calcite, quartz. We impress no one above ourselves. So there you go. So that's my impression and my stake built in there.
And then I would also like to note that you gave me gypsum for the next day. So there was that.
Well,
there was that payback.
A little payback.
A little payback. But a really great poem. And based on a true story, I think I can say, because I'd heard that story before. It would be interesting to check in on the people that thought they were given a real diamond to see how they're doing later on in life.
Yeah, right. Right. All right. So that was my poem for the week. Let's see what everybody else has. And let's go first to Kimberly Gibson Tran.
All right. So I've actually got an ekphrastic poem. I went to, well, you'll see on the poem, an art museum recently, and the mistake is a little bit ambiguous, but I kind of mean for it to be interpreted, maybe it's not clear who made the mistake.
Okay.
Yeah, interesting.
That happens a lot in life.
And I did not include an image of the painting, but it is stunning. But I'll describe it toward the end. Okay. Dentist in candlelight. We're walking the Kimball Art Museum, a rare Saturday off work. I first visited years ago with an old college boyfriend. There is something crypt-like, the artfully holed stones holding up the place. We walk upstairs and could be in a catacomb. The sounds of clinking forks and butter knives, instruments of an afternoon tea we would have booked if we'd known. My husband admires the Renaissance masters, the folds in the robes, the control of light softening the flesh of portraits. Curious, I wonder who they were. I read only 3 lines of the plaque before my eyes tear back to the painted lady's lace. Traces of saints and demons, vivid impressions of an artist's mind. I'm waiting on a text message from someone I've not talked to in a while. I wrote a poem depicting her divorce, warned her it's coming out. I'm proud of the study I made, but drifting from wall to wall, I can understand how she might object to a portrait she didn't know was being made of her. In one young noble's picture, the background stages an uprooted tree. I see another story, an archway in the dark. I draw near the flame held close to a man's beard. The worried wife clutches his clammy hand as the dentist plans the extraction. My phone dings. It feels a bit invasive, she says. Under everything, a silver platter for catching, and the mouth-opened man gapes at the ceiling where a shadowy crocodile crooks toothily over them.
Yeah, really strong images there in that poem throughout.
Yeah, and I really like how you weaved between the two stories. It works so well. I think people get so caught up in sometimes of like, oh, how do I make this transition work or whatever, and that you just do it, right? Like you just did in that poem that works so well.
Yeah, I've been trying to do that. It's a sort of an experiment. And if anyone wants to see the painting, it's the same as the title of the poem, Dentist in Candlelight.
I feel like I've already seen it. That was great, but I will look it up too.
Yeah, well, great poem, Kimberly. Thanks so much for sharing that.
Thank you.
It was Kimberly Gibson Tran with Dentist in Candlelight. Let's go to Nivedita.
Hello.
Hey, Nivi, great to see you.
Hi. How are you guys doing? Sorry I couldn't make it for the last 2 weeks.
No, it's great to have you back.
We missed you, though. We're glad to see you again.
Yeah, and you've had some great poems, too, that I've got the pleasure to read.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Thank you so much. I meant to come last week. I actually logged into Zoom, and then one of my husband's relatives called, and then the call just went on forever. And by the time the call was completed, the show had gotten ready. So,
I'm sorry to hear that, but we're really glad to have you back, though.
I have a slightly humorous take on this poem.
Okay.
Great.
This happened back while I was studying in the UK. As students, we always have these potluck kind of lunches or dinners where everybody gets together. And this sort of happened there, and I just remembered it as soon as I read the prompt. So that's where I took this poem.
Well, great. Yeah, let's hear it.
The chili incident. She mistook sugar for salt and added a generous heap into the bubbling chili. Dinner was polite at first. Then came the coughs, the wide eyes, her brother's theatrical, "Is this dessert or revenge?" Even the cat refused a second sniff. The pot sat untouched, a sweet monument to one bold, misguided scoop.
That is funny.
That's
Thanks.
funny.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that, Nivi.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Have a good evening. You guys.
Yeah, thanks. Have a good day.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
That was a Nivi Karthik with the chili incident.
We had a chili incident here because I added way too much spice
Wait.
to our chili.
It was a spicy
we were
week.
dying. It's like, I'm sorry. I wish it was sugar.
I don't know. I think I'd prefer spice to too much sugar.
I don't know, but I need a break.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for sharing that again, Nivi. All right. Next up, let's go to Carla Schwartz. Hey, Carla.
Okay, you can hear me now.
Yeah.
Hi.
Sorry.
Great. Yeah, great to see you.
Sorry. Great to see you. Such a great interview and fantastic poems. And so this mistake is should be obvious in the poem, and I added one line. You'll realize when I read it, and the only reason it's because the impression was implied before, but now it should be clear. If not, it's called Dead Flowers. That things grow in this horrible time is a wonder. Crocuses emerging from the wintered over lawn, just waking to spring. That I was not really that upset. You let the screw pile foundation company's tractor trample my newly transplanted flowering plants. I only knew when I saw the impression in the soil. A mistake, you said. What I should have done, staked out the area before the machine came. What can I do now? I bring some wood chips and distribute these among the undersoil scatterings of almost invisible plantings. Strawberries, columbines, peonies. I carry bucket after bucket of wood chips. I shrivel in empathy each time I look at the hellebore at the plot center, its leaves crisped and burned from exposure to cold. I feel crushed when I look, but I do look. The tight fists of the deep purple flowers seem unfazed. I hope the strawberries will thrive. What does a peony plant mashed at first sprout become? Can I still hope for blooms? Construction project, casualties, queens of the underground.
Yeah, really interesting combination there. Thanks so much for sharing that, Carla. Dead flowers.
And I hope the peonies bloom.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, excellent, Hyben. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, it's Carla Schwartz with Dead Flowers. Let's go to Dick Westheimer next.
Hello, all.
Hey, Dick.
Hi.
Hi. So I asked a question on the prompt page, which was, is a poem that is prompted by a prompt but doesn't directly address it qualify as a prompt poem?
Is this a riddle?
This is a riddle. This is a riddle.
I think it definitely
and-
does. Yeah.
Yeah, and the poem does address it, but it was sort of like the poem unfolded from the prompt, but didn't directly address it until I reread it and said, well, it kind of does. It's kind of buried in there. So here we go with Newton's third law of mending and mistakes. The robins of spring cannot mend the worm. The kingfisher caught in the pheasant snare cannot mend his leg. The cardinal I spied as I drove south on Route 25, its red as bright as a warning light, cannot fix the fender I bent. May, robes the bare branches with green, completes the healing work in June before giving way to the canicule, the days craving release from all those weeks of heat. Autumn relieves the trees of their foliage, leaving berries, mites, and seeds for the robins of winter to eat. The worms burrow under the ground and sleep.
Yeah, great extended metaphor in
Yeah.
that poem, Dick.
And so many images. Yeah.
Yeah.
And for me, there was a little experiment with how can a poem move back to where it began and still move? Like is that sort of movement within where the transformation is a circle rather than like you emerge different from where you began. How does that work in terms of a poetic? And I'm not sure, but I let it happen.
That's a great question. I mean, there's so many different types of movement, both physically and then within a poem, I guess I would say. Sounds like a topic we might have to explore in the poetry space, frankly, because I would talk about that for an hour.
I think there's some Merwin poems that do that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I'm just like Merwin,
Pretty close.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much, Dick. Yeah, always
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Yep. Is that Dick Westheimer with Newton's third law of mending and mistakes. Next, let's go to Amanda Harris.
All right. So
Hi.
I have watched many exercise videos where people try to pick up a weight that's way too big and they fall down. So that's sort of where this is.
That's maybe my favorite opening segment ever.
Yeah, it's amazing to watch. All right. House of magic. As if by magic, the bar overtakes his head. I would expect such things from a seasoned pro, but never a novice who is, by law, too jittery to try such a stunt. Somewhere is a rule which says that whatever doesn't kill us tests the bird, paralyzes the squirrel. I watch the fall and imagine silent rain.
Yeah. Always such great energy and concision in your poems, Amanda. Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you,
Amanda.
Yeah, thanks so much. A fun impetus for that, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was As If by Magic by Amanda Harris. Let's go to Christiana Doucette next.
Hello.
Hey,
Hi.
Christiana, great to see you.
Good to see you too. I went with so I like to build dollhouse miniatures. I think I've shown you all like the big dollhouse I was doing before, but this time I focused on one of the dollhouses that it's like well, I'll show you one that works and not the one that is in this. So that
cool.
you build it inside and then it's just a bookend on the bookshelf.
Oh, that's really
I
cool.
really like building them.
Yeah.
So this is about one that I messed up.
Oh.
So, the missing spark. Before I closed the walls, I checked the lights. I twisted wire to wire and flipped the switch. The lights I'd built flicked on, gleaming so bright it let me know I'd made it without hitch. I fed the wires through the panel wall, unfed them when they tangled in a ball, and tried again to thread them through the hole, relinked them to the bulb, and tucked the pack way out of sight beneath the wooden scroll, fastening the panel shut with glue shellac. I flipped the switch. Lights flickered and went out. Somewhere there was a short, without a doubt. I pulled the pack back out and checked the ends. I reattached the wires to each node, but still it didn't work. The small bookend scene was set, but streetlights wouldn't glow. I sighed and used a flat head as a pry. I only wished the glue had not yet dried. The flaw exposed behind the furnished wall took time and vulnerability to solve. I built the chambers of my heart with all the skill I had, yet somehow light devolved. Behind the scrim I'd worked so hard to dress, the wires had come loose. It was a mess. The hot ends melted, scorched where they're exposed. I insulated ends and taped them down, then squirted more glue to make sure all's enclosed behind the wall again. I looked around for fragile pieces broken by the fix. the shelf into the bench to reaffix, to look at it together once again. Someone who hadn't seen it might believe the chamber is how it has always been. But as the builder, when I look, I grieve at what has been removed. The broken bird deposed, the crusted sign dried glue has blurred.
Yeah. Well, there's always great rhymes and rhythms in that poem. And how long did these take to make? I was wondering that. And now
These ones?
Yeah.
Well, I kind of like split it up and do it when I feel like it. So sometimes they take a long time, and sometimes it's like I think I could make one in a week if I'm sitting there like just doing it like for an hour and a half or so at night or something like that. And they're really relaxing to make. They're a lot of fun. I mean, I really enjoy building them. They have like infinity mirrors at the back, so it makes it look like it goes further.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And they're
that is so cool.
We saw them
And
at
it's so cool to
Joann's
have on
once.
your bookshelf too,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, I said it's something I could see myself getting into one day. It looks really fun. Yeah.
Definitely does.
They've all been birthday presents to me so far, and I'm like, yes, give me more.
That's great. Well, yeah, thanks so much for sharing both that
Thanks.
artwork and the great
Yeah.
poem. Thanks for sharing it. It was Christiana Doucette with The Missing Spark. Let's go to Hamet Malik next.
Hello.
Hey,
Hi.
Hamet. Yeah, great to see you.
Good to see you too. Thank you. I'll get into mine because it's a little bit long. I don't know why I'm writing long ones recently.
Well, that's great. Go where your heart
Yeah.
desires.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm. On lizards and other questions of survival. The well-I never leaf-tailed gecko in the garage yesterday that I shuffled back outside, whispering, I love you, I love you, I love you, is back today. His little head held up in a darling question mark, looking at me like a puppy. Is this your new home, Munchkin? But I can't love him, in case he doesn't survive in here. In case this is the way he's meant to go, gifted the magic of a last shared moment, echoing behind his eyes to the next life. Then he'll come back as a moonchild, a healer, a keeper of mistakes. I've wondered if I lived, unlike the others, by mistake. If I'm really the eldest, or just the eldest survivor. Did my mother pretend swallow the baby poison he spooned each time her belly foiled his plans? Did she not dare love me as I first fluttered inside, just in case? Was there a lizard on the wall behind her to distract him so she could spit into her handkerchief and swallow a fortress of angel light instead? Did she hide her useless hands in the pocket of her dress, still unable to bear them so far outside her buried gems? You couldn't leave so easily back then, back there. I might have poisoned him instead, but my story was etched a few slides across. I wonder what snuffed the last ember of their love. I hate saying that, their love. I don't know the Arabic word for narcissist, or if there is one, but she must have known what it meant. How a dream can grow into a handler and reshape a woman into a casket of tiny, gorgeous whales. Oh, fate, why cast me in the image of that spooner of misery? But she snuffed him. I stick out his chin and inhale.
Yeah, powerful poem. A lot of emotion comes through in that one, Hamet. Thanks so much for sharing it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was Hamet Malik with On Lizards and Other Questions of Survival.
I really like the title too.
Yeah, great title. Let's go to Jared Campbell next.
Hello.
Hey,
Hi,
Jared. Great to see you.
Good to see you. This week's issue of The New Yorker has a really interesting profile of the novelist Sayaka Murata, and the interviewer went together with her to visit her the middle school she attended, and she recounted one of her memories from going to school there. And so that the first paragraph of this is a reinterpretation of that memory.
Interesting.
Yep.
Yeah.
Impressionism. When I was in middle school, I was tormented by a bully in my class. She would target a student, and then the whole class would ostracize the victim until the bully lost interest and moved on to someone else. I wanted to understand the bully. Why did she treat people that way? I became obsessed with her, imagining the home life that had warped her, the cold mother, the abusive father who inspired a fear and anger that over the years had transformed into a lust for cruelty. One day my curiosity became unbearable, and I followed her home from school to a normal house in a normal neighborhood. A normal mother opened a normal door and said, "Welcome home." I was so disappointed. What a violence I had done, creating a miserable life for my bully and hoping it was true just so my misery would have an explanation. People will do any violence in hope of explaining themselves to themselves. When I was about 8 years old, I was walking home from school and I saw a beautiful tree. I pressed a piece of modeling clay against it to record the pattern of its bark. When I got home, I took it out of my pocket to show it to my mom. The image it presented was the texture of the inside of my pocket.
Well, what a great use of those two completely different places.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for sharing that, Jared. Really interesting
Thanks.
poem. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was Jared Campbell with Impressionism. Next, let's go to Bethany Jarmel.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, Bethany. Great to see you.
Good to see you.
So what do you got for us this week?
Yeah, so this poem is inspired by a famous mistake of Eve in the Garden of Eden. So that's kind of the loose inspiration for this one.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also based off of a line from Julia Alvarez. The title is. So, I wanted what God wanted when he made the world. I wanted blue, a tablecloth stretched above us, threads snapping at the seams. I wanted the green of algae spawning across the planet pond. I wanted a continuous turning, a tilting toward the sun. I wanted every sweet-fleshed fruit, every ground-grown bean. I wanted fur and fins and flippers, tails and stripes and golden eyes, but nothing as much as I wanted you. Even now, I'm not sure if you're the pear or the python. And in this story, am I the deity or just naive and naked, juices dripping down my chin?
Yeah, a great turn to a love poem there.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for sharing that, Bethany. It was great.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, that was Bethany Jarmel with I Wanted What God Wanted When He Made the World. Next, let's go to Audrey Friedman.
Hello, Tim, Katie,
Hey,
and
Audrey, great to see
everybody
you.
else.
Yeah.
Good to be here. All right, this one is called Teaching Obedience. You can call it trust, safety. Be a good girl and do what I tell you. Good thing I was more like my mild father than my combustible mother. Like a puppy, I enjoyed the petting and praise. Not so much the manic times when she vacuumed imaginary bugs from electrical sockets and ceilings. She threatened to leap from a third-story window to the concrete below when in my early teens, I began to become myself. You must love me no matter what. And I did for a long time, for too long. But unlike the docile parakeet in its cage, I learned to open doors.
Yeah, well, great life lesson in that.
Yeah, really strong ending. Hard to get stronger than that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that, Audrey. Audrey Friedman with Teaching Obedience. Let's go next to Matt Joseph.
Hi, guys.
Hey, Matt. Good to see you.
Hey, so just because all the cool kids are doing it, I decided to try a high bun. I've never done one before. So, and I have to say, these readings, this is like drinking from the greatest fire hose ever. These readings are just all this poetry just flowing through us. So anyways,
good.
All right. So, Black Ice. I'm 16, riding shotgun with my stepfather at the wheel, rolling south down US 23 through the ghost light of midwinter Michigan, the sun's batteries dying slow, and we've said almost nothing to each other since my mother split 2 months ago. He and I left to forage for grubs on our one tree island, left mute, because what sound do two forgotten guys make but the occasional whimper that neither wants the other to hear? When he suddenly says, "Oh," and taps the brakes, doing 75. And we are spinning then, our rusty beater a 2-ton ballerina doing a slow-mo pirouette. As we pass every point on the compass, west, north, east, then south again at last, watching his hands doing what he taught me on those unplowed Dixboro back roads. How you turn into the spin. Don't freak. Maybe try to have some fun with it, like that tilt-a-whirl at the Washtenaw County Fair. And then all at once our tires bite dry freeway and we feel it through the shit suspension in our tailbones, and we drive straight on as if it hasn't happened, or as though it was supposed to happen, just so. The two of us sitting like Russian dolls with their almost smiles, nesting in the silence within silence, headed towards a house overflowing with echoes, waiting at the end of a very long year. Think of all that's changed, except for the parts of me that have never really stopped spinning.
I have to say, I love that Russian dolls metaphor. That is super powerful. That was like a gasping type moment for me. That is really, really brilliant.
Yeah, and the Black Ice story is very vivid too. It brings me back to
it happened.
spinning around a few times.
And it was freaky, and it was real quiet in the car. So thanks you guys. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that. Yeah, that was Matt Joseph with Black Ice. Next, let's go to a first-time caller. Phyllis C. is here. That would be Phyllis Charette.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm
Phyllis. Yeah.
Like absolutely unexpectedly nervous.
Oh, well, don't worry about that. We're all friends here, just
glad
sharing
you're
some
here.
poems.
Yep.
Yeah.
I know. I've been watching for like months and months.
Oh,
well, that's wonderful. So where are you
So
calling
cool.
from?
I'm calling from Winnipeg, Manitoba, up in the middle of Canada.
Oh, our Canadian friends. Yeah, we got a bunch of those too. Yeah. Well, thanks for being here.
So, deep vein thrombosis is for Larry. You got a DVT in your left leg. Found out when it swole to pufferfish dimensions, ankle boned like dimples in the flesh, and stiff as rigor, though it hadn't killed you first. They gave blood thinners, said to keep it raised above your heart, and so you slumped limp in your chair, half closed eyes, mouth slack, back slimper. Leg hung high on the narrow arm and left to drain. Picture pheasants suspended out of frame, eyes dull and clouded, that imaginary reek. And later, when you roused and wandered off to piss out the fluid your kidneys pumped out, the chair arm's long debossed impression stomped along behind the slightly deflated flesh and flexed with every stubborn step.
Oh, yeah. Beautiful rhythms and sounds in that
Yeah.
poem. Really enjoyed the journey and tough topic, too. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. And
Hope you come back soon. Yeah, that's great that you joined us tonight. Thanks.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, come back. That was Phyllis Charette with deep vein thrombosis. Yeah, I was waiting for you to say that because you've taken over the role.
And
of
then
saying
I was
that.
starting to hear Charlotte in the background. I was thinking maybe Charlotte was going to say it.
All right. Yeah. Well, really good to see you, Phyllis.
Yeah,
Glad
thanks.
you're here. Let's go to Brian O'Sullivan next.
Hello.
Hey, Brian.
Hey, Brian. Great to see you.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Great interview too. It's a little long, so I guess I'll jump in.
Okay.
It's when a pig could fly. God said, "Let there be a hog," and there was a hog. But just the first draft, a bit muddled in conception, with a curly tail butting up against its exhaust pipe, and little chrome wings sticking out in pink flanks. God, wearing what would one day be called a biker jacket and sporting an I Heart Mother Earth tattoo on his beefy shoulder, mounted the beast and rode everywhere, all at once, barely ruffling his curly beard. When he returned, there was a shiny little angel standing by, watching, all lit up in awe. "Want to give it a whirl, kid?" God asked. "Jeepers," said Lucifer. God was still the light bearer's ride or die in those days, and an angel can't die, so he saddled up. "Remember now, just to the pearly gate, then back." Lucifer nodded, but in a moment he was riding past the pearly gates and still speeding up, with cosmic winds blowing through his radiant mane. He was becoming velocity. He was inventing disobedience. He was inventing freedom. Then God's fierce face filled the sky before him, shouting something he couldn't hear. Lucifer lost control. The hog plowed into rock, and it kept going. Lucifer stepped out into the flames and into the deep impression he had made. He trembled as God descended before him. But God smiled, looking around. "It's magnificent, and it's all part of the plan." And in that moment, Lucifer invented two emotions, feeling relieved and feeling a little pissed off. And something else. He was curious. "What did you say up there?" he asked. And God replied, "Let there be a Grand Canyon."
That's great, Brian. Great apocryphal story. I'm sure that's how it actually happened.
Yeah,
we were just there last year. And...
Yeah. Yep, that was it. I heard the same story, you know?
I could see it, yeah.
That was
I was
great.
having like Zoom problems while I was listening, and I was thinking it might be divine intervention kicking me off, but I guess it let me through.
I also feel like this is a continuation from Jared Campbell's Pig 3 poem. glad we found the pig in the end.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks as always, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
Yeah. Brian O'Sullivan was When a Pig Could Fly. Next, let's go to John Arthur, who has been on before. I believe been in Rattle as well, but not in a bit. Hey, John, good to see you.
How's it going? Yeah,
Hey.
it's been a little while.
Yeah, well, glad to have you back.
Thanks. So I'll jump right in. This one's pretty much a full page.
Okay.
Great.
It's called 145 BPM for Maya and Mira. My daughter, too old now for wheels on the bus, sits in the back with a book looking down at her mythology, legs not yet long enough to reach the floor, dangling as I strum and sing to the younger kids, to her little sister, who today is my helper, holding up her fingers, swishing windshield wipers to clear away imaginary rain, holding her arms open then open and shut to let everyone in, screams singing like my older one used to, the loudest kid in the library, front and center, standing as close to me as she can, her shoulder pressed up against my microphone stand, until the sound of the dropped copy of timeless tales of gods and heroes crashing against the floor almost knocks me off my beat. I look up and see my older one's legs swaying when my younger one stomps her feet. They're the only metronomes I need. And together now, and together we keep perfect time.
That's great. Well, I love that they're the only metronomes I need. What a great
Yeah,
line.
that's really
Yeah,
sweet.
That is.
Mhm.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that, John.
Thanks, John.
Yeah, it was John Arthur with 145 BPM. Let's go next to Jeff Stumpo.
Hey, y'all.
Hey, Jeff.
Hey.
Great to see you.
Have you
Well,
ever
let's see,
written
yeah.
something that you simultaneously think to yourself, this is so stupid, but it's also exactly what it's supposed to be?
Interesting. Okay.
So,
That's a good lead-in.
so that was this one.
All right.
All right.
And yeah, I went through like 20 drafts of haikus and then realized, no, it's supposed to be a visual poem, just a minimalist one.
Interesting. Okay.
And I confess that I submitted this both for Poets Respond and the prompt lines.
Nice. Double duty.
Yeah.
One Acme tariff. Stock market hovering like Wile E. Coyote. Canyon dust cloud. The perfectly matched crater.
That's great. I love the reading of it too, Jeff. That was really
that's
fun.
definitely good. And I see what you mean. Trying to compress that into a haiku would be a tall order. So,
yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah,
Thanks.
great. Thanks so much, Jeff. Yeah. This is Jeff Stumpo with a 1 Acme tariff. Yeah, that was a good poem for this week too. All right, let's go next to Rachel Grieve.
Hi.
Hey, Rachel, great to see
So
you.
I have kind of the opposite situation of Dick, where I heard the prompt and then I realized that I started a poem last week that worked for it, like the previous week.
Uh-huh.
So here it is. It's called Niagara Falls at 2 a.m. I think I would rather write about waterfalls than about my life, about the tumble of Niagara over the old Dolomite, the gradual eroding, the diminishing diversions, the control of nature on a river that flows from a lake so great it holds a ship that once held you, a ship that plies through locks, that loads and unloads ore, that weathers storms, that carries rough hands sparking lighters in the rain to smoke their way to forgetting. A recurrent clang, metal meets spike, horseshoes. The double fall of Minneopa. It's a slash in the land where we swam with the swarm of Minnesota cousins. We scratched our names in the yielding rock of the cliff, which 20 years later cracked, tumbled, and crushed a boy carving his initials and his sweethearts into the bowl of the lower fall. The Jordan's an old stone, so clean it disintegrates to a sand they carry to Texas by the trainload to prop open the blasted oil wells. Fracking sand, they call it. That boy at the falls was not you, and that sweetheart was not I. But still, I imagine the J and the R, and then the crush as the thing you love suddenly kills you. Singed sugar pressed between firecrackers.
Yeah, well, that was a beautiful haiku. I love the use of the form and great haiku in there, which is always the key. Thanks so much for sharing that, Rachel. Yeah, it was Rachel Grieve with Niagara Falls at 2 a.m. And Katie had to step out. The girls are, we got the girls and they get upset sometimes. And so she's got to go deal with that. But she hopefully will be back. We'll see. In the meantime, let's go next to Jamie Thomas.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, Jamie. Yeah, great to see you. Well, I don't see you yet, but great to hear you. How you doing?
I'm well, thanks. You'll just have to trust I'm still adorable.
Okay, I'm sure you are. So what do you got for us this week?
Well, it's pretty lighthearted. I will say, though, that by the time I got to the end of it, I sort of felt like maybe I did learn a little bit something about myself and kind of how I felt about this relationship. So, yeah.
All right. Yeah, let's hear it.
Okay. A reflection on that time I let my husband cut my bangs. He said he'd watched a tutorial. He said symmetry was a myth pushed by big geometry. I laughed. That was my first mistake. The second was passing him the scissors without asking him about his dominant hand. It was vibes. His hand was vibes. Snip. He called it edgy. I called it accidentally spiritual, because seeing your own scalp before coffee is a kind of awakening. He apologized by making pancakes in the shape of angels. I joked, these look like ghosts. He replied so sincerely, I don't see it. And that was the moment I knew this is who I chose. The kind of man who conflates confidence with capability, specters with satiety, and bad haircuts with love. I could have done worse. The bald spot grew over, like a lot of mistakes, as if nothing had happened. But when I hear the snip-snapping of blades testing the air, I still flinch just a little. Which is to say I'm older now, but still not immune to vanity or apology or pancakes, especially when they're haunted by good intentions.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, what a sweet poem. Thanks for sharing that. I love all the personal details there and such a sweet thing to be sharing. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Yeah, it was Jamie Thomas with a reflection on that time I let my husband cut my bangs. Good title, too. We know it's going to go somewhere fun with a title like that. All right, let's go next to... let's go to Wayne next. Hey, Wayne, are you there? Gonna unmute yourself?
Hello.
Hey, Wayne. Yeah, great to see you. I don't
Can you hear
see
me?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, good to hear you.
Oh,
See
very
you.
good.
Hear you. Yep.
Every time I do something like this, it's a experiment, you know?
Well, the experiment is successful so far. So what do you got to share for us?
I have a poem called Dare,
Mm-hmm.
and it kind of leaves an impression, and not necessarily for me. We have these things in Florida called anoles, but we don't call them anoles. They're lizards. They're the little tiny lizards that are brown and bright green. But this is a poem about that. Dare. As I take the path to my car, a band of lizards decides to play dare with me, incited, I suppose, by the Florida sun, a feast of moths and their strange dusted wings and mischief. One after another, the creatures scurry like invincible teenagers from the jagged blades of the front yard onto the concrete walkway where I stagger like a beast, dodging their fragile existence. It seems this foolhardy game they play to loom beneath the eclipse of my Cordovan soul satisfies some reptilian bravado. Damn it, I yell with the fall of an off-balance step, and I crush the slow one, the unlucky one who probably never did this chicken run until today. They surely never told him, you just have to go, don't pause, and never mentioned he couldn't time it that way. I stop for a moment and look, anguish over this small life I've sent to a different plane, two-dimensional now. And as I drive away, I can't help but think about Rorschach tests, how one day lying on the good doctor's couch, he'll show me those terrible ink blots, twist his brow into rapt curiosity. That one looks like a lizard, I'll say. And that one is definitely death, no doubt about it. Of course, I'll tell him that one looks like a butterfly, and at least one will remind me of my dear old mother, just to make him smile and nod, a look that says, ah, now we're getting somewhere.
Well, that's a great poem, Wayne, and you have to stick around for my Saiku, which might come out. That was a word, anole, that I looked up today because I didn't know what kind of lizard that was.
No way.
Yeah, I never saw that word before, and now here it is in a poem.
I'm learning it in this moment.
Yeah, that's the lizards we have. There's green anoles and brown anoles.
Boy, do we have them. Yeah.
Are invasive.
Yeah, we used to have the bright green ones here, but there's what's called a Cuban anole, which is the brown one, and they're more aggressive, and they basically wiped out the green ones. Every now and then you'll see a really nice green one, but
yeah, I was just reading about this afternoon, like 2-3 hours ago.
That's amazing.
That's amazing. That is. That's so weird. But wait, so I couldn't find your poem, so we were just listening to you read. What's your full name, Wayne?
Wayne, a middle initial S, and the last name Williams.
Wayne S. Williams. Okay, great. Well, thanks so much for being here. And where are you calling from, Wayne?
I'm in Florida, in the Tampa Bay area. I host a poetry group. We're actually tomorrow night, we're celebrating my 19th year of hosting my group at our library here.
Oh, that's really wonderful.
What's your group called?
It's called Poets Live. And you can find, I do a kind of a video synopsis of a lot of poets. And I've got about 65, 66 different poets that I've gathered their work and created videos for and put on my group page on Facebook. And if you look up Poets Live, Wayne Williams, you'll find it. And there's, like I say, 65 videos on there that have just a synopsis of every kind of poet. Tomorrow night, it's going to be Bukowski.
Oh, that sounds great. I'll definitely look you up.
Yeah, it definitely is.
I'm working on a biography. Hopefully, I'll get it done tonight before tomorrow's meeting.
I know how that
goes. A little pressed for time, but we'll see what we can do.
Definitely, yeah. Well, thanks for keeping all that alive, Wayne. Thanks for coming here, and hope you come back soon.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks.
I'll be back. Thank you. Take care.
Great. Thanks.
That was Wayne Williams. It has like a lizard theme today.
I know. Charlotte would be very happy.
She would. Yeah, she loves those green anoles.
She really, and she can catch them.
She can't. I can't. I don't know. They're too quick.
She's 5. Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, she's good. Okay, so let's go next to Tina Denetclaw.
Okay, I'm
Hey,
getting more
Hi.
organized. Hi, nice to see you both.
Yeah, great
You
to see
too.
you.
Thank you. So this is kind of long, so I'm going to go right into it.
Okay.
And I also submitted it as the poets respond because I feel this way nowadays. So eyes on the horizon. At 13, I rode my black gelding along a sod levee parting wheat from woods, highway halfway to the edge of town, more than a mile, alone with my thoughts and my horse, until I shuddered from chill, raised my eyes and saw the hazy horizon. It was dusk, and the details of stalks and trees and grass all around us collapsed into shadows of low light. We turned back into the soft gathering of night, his hoofs sure on the smooth levee ground. A burst of flight startled my gelding, one pheasant escaping the field to our right, then another and another, each unseen, a sudden flurry of long feathered wings, with plaintive trills launching into the cool evening air. My horse was unnerved. If he throws me, no one will know I'm here. I leaned forward and whispered behind his ears, "You're okay. You're okay." He took one halting step. A pheasant darted skyward. "You're okay. You're okay." Another timid step. Another pheasant. "You're okay." One more step with relaxing breath, soon walking calmly beside a series of flights. By the time the night was black, we could see the lights of home. 5 decades later, I saw thunderheads on the horizon and, and smelled wet, dusty air. By the first week in January, it was time to make moves. Have you spoken to a money manager? Have you seen a tax consultant? Everyone expected a boon, and the trading agent was irritated with me. Just do it. The math in my head proved out on paper, and I have dug a sod-hidden cellar underground, as safe as can possibly be. We won't ever lose our home. The only thing left to do is whisper calmly to my family in shelter, "We're okay. We're okay."
Yeah, sweet poem. Thanks so much for sharing that, Tina, as always.
Thanks, Tina.
You're welcome.
Yeah, that was Tina Denaclaw with Eyes on the Horizon. Next, let's go to Nate Jacob.
Hey,
Hey, Nate.
Hey, Nate. Great to see you.
we got a real problem here. I'll just apologize in advance
All right.
for this poem. I went a little literal and a little ridiculous, and well, it'll explain itself. But I'll apologize now for chasing off any of your late watchers.
Well, they got to go to
viewership's
bed.
about to go down.
All right, thanks, Nate.
Okay, titled "Thinking About Water Lilies Again," with an epigraph from Jurassic Park, the original. Your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not you could that you didn't stop to think if you should. The situation was, and long had been, already dire. The wolves of science reintroducing into landscapes the former things, the replaced things, outdated things, because no one can let go of the good and the old days. Our streets were riddled with the once extinct risen of so many famed and infamous characters, some in multiples. Joans of Arc meeting in pairs for tea, alongside 3 and 4 and more serial killers, arguing amongst themselves over who owes what, when 2 Jack the Rippers indulged drinks and apps, while Ted Bundy and Ted Bundy and Ted Bundy had smart salads and glasses of tepid water. In France, it was bakers and cheesemakers and artists, a new Claude Monet given a shared permanent residency in the basement of the Musée Marmottan Monet in hopes of more lilies, poppies, bridges, and water. It turned out, a mistake to pair him with New Rodin, an exceptional sculptor even now, but a rather flawed man who left buckets and barrels of plaster wet and unused in the bedroom, the bathroom, and at the bottom of the stairs, until one night Monet rose to pee away another fine bottle of a vintage Pinot Noir, forgot about the broken railing, and too drunk to steady himself, was heard to be saying, "Mon Dieu, I am falling to my second death. This is terrible." A thwack and a splat. Hours later, a hungover sculptor found the dead again second painter face down in a trough of hardened plaster of Paris. His perfect impression, the new sculptor's finest new work, and my lamest joke. Impression of impressionists making impressions. I'm sorry. So dumb.
Well, apologies aside, I greatly enjoyed that.
It was kind of like an Aristocrats type setup to that. You know?
Also, like, I feel kind of sad that when we talked about the whole direwolf thing, we didn't manage to let our conversation get to imagining impressionists in Paris, because that needed to happen, clearly.
It definitely did.
The natural progression, obviously.
It was the next step, logically. All right.
Thanks, Nate. That was fun. And I really like the haiku. Like, I think the haiku really works. So
yeah, it was my finest. Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Nate.
Thanks,
Always
Nate.
a pleasure.
Good night.
I hope I dream about that.
That would be a fun dream.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was Nate Jacob with Thinking About Water Lilies again. All right. Let's go to Chelsea McClellan next.
Hello.
Hey, Chelsea. Great to see you.
Great to see you. This poem, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm just playing around with some thoughts I had on a walk earlier in everybody's favorite form. It's called One Subjective Day. One subjective day, another slow-paced walk. The woods, the place we go to yawn, catch up on air, to hold each flower's name as loosely as the stalk, to kiss what's nearly dead. How delicate, the dead that decorate our walk, the almost off their stalk, the can't quite let it go, the spring beauties we named and then forgot, like air. Spring, as winter's air, has heard the tales of death too much. She wants her name unhindered by such talk. But don't we all? We go off trail and think we stalk an extra day. We stalk a squirrel, or the air it's made to walk. You go on that air and find you dead and hungry, acres to walk, no one calling your name. At least you know one name, for wild carrot, stalks like ferny salad, walk until they cloud the air, white flowers almost dead, but the roots are ready to go. You eat. It's time to go. The poison's in the name. Hemlock wants you dead, armed with purpling stalks, but Queen Anne's laces air. It seizes first your walk, your talk, both go. Your air expelled, your name. The wavering stalk is dead.
Well, it's such a sestina in such tight, short lines that have no sestina creep. It's really tough to do.
Yeah, it really is tough.
Yeah, thanks so much for
sharing.
And
also, I love that your comment was when you said it, everyone's favorite form. I was like, you mean free verse? Oh, sestina. This is a sestina. We are getting into sestina town.
Didn't sense the irony there.
No, I didn't until I was really excited when I saw the irony. I mean, it's so fun to play with around with sestinas, I think.
Well, you do a great job with sestinas
great.
always, Chelsea. Thanks for sharing
Thanks.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Yeah, it was Chelsea McClellan with One Subjective Day. Interesting title, too. All right, let's go next to. What have we done? A lot of people that are already here. Oh, Mike Bales. Sorry, Mike. Just getting to you. Hey, Mike, how you doing?
Pretty good. We got a lot of people tonight, I guess.
We do, yeah.
A lot of mistakes, I guess.
I guess so.
This will be the start of a good week. I've got this. Then Tuesday night, I got to speak to a group at the Geneseo Public Library. It's about 20 miles away. Then Wednesday, there's a launch of an anthology I'm in called, I don't know what the title is. It's about being human in the age of AI. We'll be at an auditorium at St. Ambrose University.
Oh, very cool. You're living the good life there.
Yeah.
Mike.
And I was at a book fair yesterday selling books.
Nice. Yeah.
So, this is a hybrid. I'm surprised I did another one. It's called New Season. I first saw this lady just about my age sitting behind me on the bus. She was sitting with her boyfriend and laughing. A trip to see the home opening of the Cubs in Chicago. Some of us are partying. I just went along for the trip. Off the bus, I had the chance to talk with her. Our group sat together in Wrigley Field, and I took a moment to look at her as she sat down the row from me. It was April, but my winter coat could not keep out the chill blowing in from the lake. Someone said there is no telling as to what the weather could be that month. Cold one day, warm the next. But the party continued. A touch of deception in the air. The game, although 9 innings, lasted so long, I took in the sight of high-rise towers and the lake to distract myself from the cold. But we stayed together until the end and returned to the bus. A head count showed that the lady was missing, and we feared she could be anywhere. I teased that she was in the hot tub with their star player. We sat in our seats and continued talking about her absence until she was found. She stumbled onto the bus and confessed that she turned the wrong way. A friend just met, taken by the wind.
Yeah, I love the last duo coup there.
Yeah.
Really neat. And I always love a baseball poem, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for sharing.
I heard poet Jack Spicer liked him from a friend who used to keep referring to him.
Yeah, well, that's great. Thanks so much for sharing that,
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yep, that was Mike Bales with a New Season. And indeed it is. All right, let's go next to Steve Horrell.
Hello there.
Hi.
Hey, Steve. Is it Steve Horrell or Steve Horrell? Can I ask that? Because I guess
Horrell.
every time. Horrell.
Horrell. Okay, great.
It's Horrell, but it changes in distant parts of the family too. Even the spelling's changed over the years. So, but Steve Horrell, yeah, that'll work.
Okay, great.
Great. It'll take me about a minute and a half to read it, so I have about a minute and a half to sort of think of apologies.
Well, that's part of the theme too, I guess. Or mistake poems. I guess makes sense.
I mean, there's the N word that appears in this poem, but it's just a reference to a movie, and I sort of felt that it was okay if I could use it, because actually, as a result of this little mistake or large mistake, I wound up dating this woman for months afterwards. But I just woke up and thought, mistakes. Oh my God, I've got so many of them, and so I don't know if it's a really very good poem, but there's a few mistakes in it. And it may be a mistake that I'm actually going to read it. Anyway, I'll just go ahead now. I think I've done enough damage already. Mistakes, hiding in plain sight like secret societies, Freemasons, Knights of Columbus. Mistakes, the root of all regret, decisions whimsical, inconsiderate, or merely stupid. As a teen, putting Limburger cheese on that asshole's engine block. Big mistake, but sweet, or should I say foul revenge. Telling the penis prick joke. Don't touch that penis. You'll wake the prick up. The women laughed. mistake. I began the joke with the gender reversed. Long before I got to the end, I was standing alone. Explaining the scene in Blazing Saddles, the black sheriff holds a gun to his head. One move and the nigger gets it. The white townsfolk struck dumb. Mistake. Explaining to the beautiful black woman spitting into my face, "What did you say?" My finger and thumb aimed at my forehead, where it remained for an exceedingly long time. I should never have stopped talking. Months later saying, "Sorry, Lila, goodbye." Mistakes, traveling companions we bring with us to meet other mistakes waiting just ahead.
Yeah, well, great reverie on the idea of mistake itself. Yeah, and a
Yeah.
great list of concise mistakes too. Thanks for sharing that,
Thanks.
Steve.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks. It was Steve Horo with is it all D, all of the above, or E, none of the above? Interesting title too. All right. Few poets left here. Stephen Croft, next up.
Hey, Tim and Katie.
Hey, Stephen. Great to see you.
Thank you. I sent you two versions of this. I sent it, and then I decided I should put the epigraph in italics, and I sent that. So
All right.
I know
Yep,
which
got
one
that
you
up
should-
here. Yep.
Okay. This comes from a story in Ancient Origins magazine. It's imagining how a late medieval soldier who was found at the bottom of a lake died. So this is the lament of the soldier's ghost 500 years after his desertion. A skeleton with sword and knives was discovered embedded in silt at the site of an ancient wooden bridge in Lithuania's Lake Asvija. Scientists with Vilnius University examined the body and said that the person was male and died in the 16th century, though they don't yet know why he died. I expected to lie down in battle by the bodies of men, the dark folding me as death had already folded them. Bemused by the play of light on ripples, I tripped awkwardly on the bridge, my inner eye looking for my heroic future. The shock of sinking cold water, a muffled cry as my armor sank me into this ethereal world. These 500 years below water, only fishermen's boats disappeared by day above in the distance. At night, well above me, pinwheels of stars spun their ancient patterns, but in the gloom I never saw them. Mourners' eyes be pools of sorrow for loyal knights who die for the kingdom. Unlike these eager eyes that now prick and measure, with what is left of me, I tell you, my pain was not in death or drowning, but that no blowflies came to buzz and whisper, "You are dead" on the field of battle. Embarrassment, my pain, like the water, it still saturates me.
Well, thanks for sharing that, Steve. Really interesting poem, especially with that quote, which is fascinating. The lament of the soldier's ghost, 500 years after his desertion. Thanks so much for sharing that, Steve.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. That was a Stephen Croft with that poem. And let's see. Next, let's go to Dennis Usden.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey,
Guys,
Dennis.
how
Great
you
to see
doing?
you. Yeah.
I sent you two poems, but I think I'll read what's the title is Lure, L-U-R-E. Have that
Okay.
one?
Yeah, I'll pull it up. Yeah.
Okay. Lure. I am the haunted house. The lure of children is my addiction. 2 children, 7 and 9, live close by. The mangled front door is open, so snooping young ones may enter. I hear their secretive footsteps crossing my ragged threshold. They scurry towards my basement entrance, a whisper of a walk like mice. Down the shadowy stairs, I let out a scream. The young turn quickly around, hop like kangaroos up the steps. A thump, The 7-year-old falls. Shards of glass slice her tiny forearm, a pink piece of bloody skin left. I will not use that tone again.
Oh, interesting poem there. Thanks so much for sharing that, Dennis.
thank you.
Lure. Yeah, personifying a haunted house. Interesting. All right. So that was Dennis Usden once again with Lure.
Thanks.
Next, let's go to Mary Lisa D. Diminishes.
Hello.
Hey, Mary Lisa. Great to see you. Thanks for waiting.
Oh, that's not a problem. I'm a night owl, so it's
Yeah.
fine.
Oh, that's great.
And I really, I have a lot of anxiety, so it helps for me to go laugh sometimes.
Aw.
Because I get to listen to everybody else, and then I'm chill. So.
Aw, well, that's great. Well, thanks so much.
I also have to say, I love the color of the walls behind you. Like, that is so cool.
Yeah, you and Clayton Clark
Oh.
need to get together. So you're on opposite coasts.
I love this.
Thank you. I wanted to real quick share this book, especially with Dick, because he was wondering about circular closure. This is the best book in the world on closure. It was printed in like 1968. This is the woman, and it's like supposedly the Bible. I'm going to look and see if I can find it online for free anywhere because it's out of print. But if anybody can get their hands on this.
Yeah, Poetic Closure, a study of how, can you read it? A study of how poems
Sure.
end.
And it's by Barbara Herrnstein Smith.
Well, very interesting, yeah.
That copy
Okay.
looks so well loved. So like that, you could write a poem just about how that book looks.
It's in a bag.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
It's so old, and I bought it used, and I think it was like there was only one copy because it's super rare or something. I don't know, and then I took notes, but they're so messy, nobody else could even bother to read them. That's a whole nother story.
Oh,
So.
well, I love that show and tell. That was
Yeah,
great.
me too.
So thank you for letting me share that. And real quick about the poem. I also started one last week and finished it this week because I ended up combining both prompts, which was really a lot of fun. I didn't expect it to go where it went. And the accident was, which I didn't think there was one, but when I thought about it, the accident was I was doom scrolling on YouTube. And I was clicking on all these very hateful, this one got owned, and watch, this one get torn down by a lawyer, and, and I thought, oh, what am I doing? Like, I got to get away from this. So that's where this poem came from. And
interesting.
Let me pull it up. So you'll see where I kind of combined the two. Right? I have to find it. There we go. Okay. Rage boycott. With apologies to Dylan Thomas and Rage Against the Machine. To be formed, rage needs your body, like a womb it can burst from. It can't be born on its own. So don't let rage get you pregnant. Bear more rage into the world. Don't flirt or fall in love with rage or engage in a one-night stand out of sheer boredom or bottomless loneliness. Don't let rage kiss you or align its body hard against your body alone at night, where it might not take no for an answer. And don't think you can use protection. Nothing is 100% effective. You probably shouldn't even like rage as a friend. Maybe you should avoid it altogether. But if that's not possible, if half of your nation is made of pranksters manufacturing rage, the other half isn't buying. They'll have to sell their anger and dissatisfaction to one another. Let them be mad. In time, you and I, on the sidelines, might see angels born of demons. Or instead of angels falling, we may witness devils rising, not to power, but to occasions that demand transformation. Then may they transfigure before our eyes, so that all of our visions of rage tempting to enter us might dissipate. Any attraction to rage we may have had might be forgotten. Then may we forgive all the wounds rage inflicted. And may we forgive ourselves. We believed we were running to smell butterflies. Let us, in the end, be soft again, unimpressed.
Oh, well, that was a great poem, Mary Lisa. Thanks for sharing that, and such a great message, too. We do need a rage boycott,
Aw.
I think. There's so much, too much of that
And-
going on. Yeah.
There really is, and it's easy to get caught up in it. And thank you again for the prompt, because another poem that would not have existed if not for this, the 2 prompts actually. So, and it was a lot of fun. And yeah, it's just crazy how these things come together.
Oh, great. I love not having faith that it's going to, and then somehow it does. Right? That's the funnest part of writing a poem. Yeah.
You just got to keep trying, you know? You got to keep at it. So, thank you guys.
Thanks always, Mary Lisa. Yeah.
Good night.
Good night.
Yeah, that was Mary Lisa D. Diminishus with Rage Boycott. Yeah. All right, so that's going to wrap up the Zoomers. Let's see. Let's do Ted Guevara's poem. As always, Ted's got a photo, and his photo this week is of a stork. I'm carrying a little bundle, and let's see what the poem is. Sideline. Okay. It worries me so that the stork is not a bird. It worries them so that the stork is not a bird, but a lineman in a pugilistic sport. How can it fly, then, and uplift their belief in purity and youth? Are they part of the day magically delivering? In a world of hurt, he hunkers over their other 2 children, a girl of 3, and the boy is wearing his jersey, already appreciative of him, even in this time of news. Their mother they have not seen in 2 days. Storks fly in the straight and narrow. They don't speak mushy words. If they wear pads and cleats, they would have taken them off for the lightness of the flight. And where is the bundle of joy? Their new brother or sister. In a world of hurt, the stork still leaves an impression of hope. Maybe it's just a mistake. He hovers over, but still aground. Well, very interesting. Sideline. Thanks for sharing that as always, Ted. It's Ted Bernal Guevara. And that's going to wrap up the prompt lines for tonight. Let's see, we've got for the coup. And so written more haiku this week than normal, given the Haibin, which she'd require a haiku at some point.
They seem to.
But as already mentioned, you'll remember this, Katie, that happened the other night. This is about one of those little lizards that are all over the place. And they're so actually fun. I've never lived in a place with lizards before. Yeah. And they really, I don't know, it's cold at night still, I guess. Cold enough that they come inside. And they are green anali lizards, which I was going to include in the haiku and then didn't because I don't even know how to pronounce that word. So
yeah,
I figured
felt disingenuous.
Lizard works better, yeah.
Yeah.
So here is my little haiku. A green lizard asleep on a green leaf, his confidence. So there you go. And so, yeah, so there's this lizard sleeping right in front of the kitchen sink.
Yeah, like I was sitting down at like a bar stool in front of the kitchen sink, and Tim was on the other side, and we're having like a conversation because Tim was probably very kindly doing the dishes, and we were talking, and then I look over and I'm like, there's a lizard right by me, and I didn't even know. Like
know,
on like a house plant.
Sleeping there so
and he was so chill. He was so cool. Like he was just part of it.
And I don't know why I didn't take a picture. It was so cute.
I took a picture.
Oh, did you?
I have
Well,
a
there you
picture.
go. Okay, well, we have a picture. But then we went out to get, actually, I guess I got takeout. And then we came back, and the lizard was still there, still sleeping.
Still there.
Just snoozing away. So
and
anyway.
then I took him out onto the back porch.
Yeah, but anyway.
He had a happy ending.
And hopefully you see no brown lizards, because apparently they're invasive.
Okay.
We don't want it to become like Florida.
I feel like the green lizard is like literally invasive because it came in our house.
Well, yeah, it's a different kind of invasive. Anyway, that is the haiku for this week. Now, what do we have for a prompt next week, Katie?
We have, it's interesting because I think Himmet's poem tonight already kind of counts for this prompt to some real extent. Write a poem about an echo you've heard more than a few times. Include as many sounds as possible. So echo can be metaphorical. Heard can also be metaphorical, right? So it doesn't necessarily mean with your ears, but there are different ways, I believe, to truly feel like you've heard something. So
where did the idea for this prompt come from?
I have no idea. Honestly,
okay.
This one just popped in. And then it was funny because you and Lizzie were talking about echoing earlier after I'd already come up with the prompt. So I have no idea where this one came from.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah. We were in the old pool pipe.
I know. It just popped in. So I think it means somebody is supposed to write a really excellent poem from this.
Yeah, okay. Well,
and
hopefully
I have
the
no
poems
doubt.
will just pop out too. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, that's a great prompt. So write a poem about an echo you've heard more than a few times and include as many sounds as possible. All right, thanks for that prompt, Katie.
And take it creatively. I'm not going to be like, you didn't really hear that echo.
Of course, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, of course. We're going to try to be as creative as possible.
I know. I just want to encourage people. Otherwise, Dick Westheimer will be like, back here next week. Hey, is this really an echo I heard? And I'll be like, yes, Dick Westheimer, you've written another great poem.
Okay. Well, that is your prompt. And next week's guest is going to be Dave Newman. So 2024 Reader's Choice Award winner, Dave Newman, for I'm trying to something this old-timey veteran.
Lead this old-timey
veteran. Yeah. Wonderful poem. And, great work. Just really heartfelt and down-to-earth poetry.
Yeah.
He's got a book that's forthcoming, Better Than the Best American Poetry, which would be funny to talk about.
That's the title of it?
That is literally the title.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so that's available for pre-order, but not out yet. So we'll talk about that book.
That's
we'll
really
talk
a
about
funny title.
his work with veterans, which that poem was about from Rattle, and all the other things he does. It's Dave Newman, Rattlecast number 290, and that's going to be Sunday, April 20th. Your Echo Poems. It's the regular time, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Hope to see you there. Hope you have a great week. In the meantime, we'll talk to you later. Good night.
Good night.